I got company, got company, got company. On my march, so that you can see, I got the lion there with me in the sun. We're gonna have to be a little bit on that side to get a little bit of the more sun, but it is the 16th of September 2025, parallel with the year of darkness, 14th of November 2029. My parallel self, also an Aspie, also has Asperger's, like in this life, in this timeline. But there I'm a super scientist, Aspie, super scientist that developed great microchips, supercomputers, telecommunication gadgets, satellites. We're in the sun. 16th of September 2029. The year of darkness. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, encouraging all to work out, train, exercise, and I just got hit by the sun and gonna throw something to the garbage and get out of the way for the children with the family to just pass by safely with the bike, because they're on the bike, so they gotta get a little bit of that prudence when they go there, so I just gotta be sure that they have enough space to cross, because with my backpack, because I'm in the public, so it's always my safety, their safety, my security, their security, and it's always a tango, always a public safety dance with the individual and the collective, and the individual responsibilities and rights and duties and obligations parallel and concordant, to having, of course, all the involvement when we are now. Financially stressed, yes, financially stressed, but I still got leftovers from yesterday's donation for the food. That was nice. The couscous was really nice at the community fridge here in my island, the island of the Hog, Montreal, HAWK, Hog Island, Montreal Metropolis, second most populated city in Canada. It was top 7 in North America, even when we include Mexico. Mexico City is the capital of Mexico, is the most populated city, and yeah, I got a lot of things to be grateful for, although financially stressed, and gotta get that rock and roll 24/7 for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the truckers, the electricians. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the street, because you never know, sometimes. Even if it's one way, the street there indicates it's one way, but it's of course indicating it's not enough, because somebody who's not from here might not see that, not know, and not, of course, just turn the other side and turn in the wrong direction, and then you can come from either side, I guess. So that is just something when we have to get doing with that rock and roll, and that's always something when we gotta be mindful of today, Hot day, hotter than yesterday. This morning I wasn't moody at all. Yesterday I was moody, but today I'm okay, I'm very good today. But yesterday I was moody. The other day, of course, Sunday night I was moody. Yesterday was Monday, I was moody, but until I started working out, training, exercising, and today I'm okay. I wasn't moody. I did what I do, coffee and geopolitics and coffee, and a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of stretching. I left late, 4 hours later than I should have. I listened to a lecture from a university professor, and of course they were questioning some discussions about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I'm not too familiar. I know a little bit about I know he's a conservative and I'm more on the right wing, but I have to get more acquainted with his propositions. But of course we're taking life and assassinating somebody, it's quite hardcore, I guess. As a philosopher myself, as a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and I guess if you see somebody who goes to strike somebody immortally with a knife or a machete or a gun, then I guess if you're, you gotta say, hey, stop, drop the weapon, and in those circumstances, which are of course all side of the things, so that is just something which I will discuss. Maybe I dedicate a discussion on that, but again, this week I'm gonna get acquainted with more of the videos, the ideas, the theories of Charlie Kirk, because I really don't know much about, but of course it is tragic, I guess, because we're taking of life. And my of course points is, as a North American collective geopolitical strategist, philosopher, and analyst, theoretical analyst, and strategist who develop strategies for the North American collective. Of course, my concern is also foreign influence from outside Canada and the United States, who might use such events as this to the detriment of our national security, national well-being, and morale, and etc., etc. I'm not going to go too much into that, but suffice it to say that that is also a possibility, which myself I'm always meditating about, because that's what I do mostly. I'm a geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, artist, athlete, philosopher. androgynous pansexual aspect. I live with this neurodivergence known as Asperger's, and that's just my own individual experience and an individual point of view, I guess, an individual sovereign citizen. As I also am a mystic and believe in reincarnations, and I was born lives. I guess you got enough of my face. Several past lives. I was born in the USA, you know, so I'm always an American. Canadian American, always for the North American Collective, NORAD, NATO 24/7, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, those in the daycares who changed some diapers today. And although financially stressed, I'm also always open for business myself. So maybe I'm gonna, in the next 4 days, give me today, tonight, and 4 days, I guess. In 4 days, I'll gonna comment more on Charlie Kirk, the assassination and the implication. And I wish I could fill this fridge up just with goods, just one day. And I need to clean it, of course, myself. I need to help in the cleaning. Sometimes you help what you can. And this is a Sunshine Food Pantry. It's empty now, but sometimes yesterday is full. And oh, you got a little one piece there left. No one left behind. That's about to needs to get washed and eaten. Otherwise it's gonna get eaten, you know. So that is something where we gotta be doing like that and getting on the propositions. You know, see what? Look at that. See, I don't know what it is with that, but that is what it is. That is what it is, man. You know, and something where we gotta get doing on that rock and roll. You know, crossing the street safely here, brutally. It's always a double trouble, you know. And I want to direct myself. I want to direct myself towards that. I want to get God. This one is so nice. This here and this one's also, but this is so nice. Hey, this is so nice here. I just love it. Whoever did this, you know, it doesn't really. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is so nice. Whoever did this here, super nice. The color is just fresh. So thank you to the worker there. It embellishes the corner, you know. The beautification of the city is something that's important for me, you know. Really important for me. And as an Imperial Democratic Republican coming, let it be. ASAP. I wonder how much is the rent here. I'm not looking to move. I'm grateful, thankful for where I be now, because I used to live in a very small, moldy place on the ground, still on the island of the Hawk, and I moved 10 years ago. But of course, I'm just wondering how much rent has gone up, just to compare maybe in the past 5 years, you know, how much rent has been up with that. And that is something which I gotta be meditated about, and all the circumstantial elements where we are now, because of course rents have been going up, including my rent. My rent has also been going up. But I can't complain in my case. I'm just, because, you know, I calculate percentages and statistics. Percentages and statistics is something which I do kind of automatically. I guess because of my neurodivergence, mathematics is something that I'm inclined to do even constantly now. I give you an example. For example, when I took this, I was wondering, exactly calculating how many prunes were harvested. Of course, I have to know if this was local. If this was local, maybe it's Ontario, Canada, maybe it's imported, I don't know, because it's just one, so how can I really know, right? But nonetheless, let's say for Canada, how many prunes were harvested, like this one. And I kind of calculated, of course, there was a certain amount in tons, right? Because this is just a few grams. This is maybe, I don't know, it's not 40 grams, whatever. It's about whatever grams, maybe 11 grams, 44 grams max, you know. That is about that, but that is just something where you gotta be doing, man, to calculate. And in my brain was kind of meditating how much was the harvest, the total harvest, and the local harvest, and if it was local for me. Usually when I say local, I'm kind of saying Montreal, Quebec, or even North America, depends. I have local. So 4 different locals. That's Montreal, the island of the Hawk, and we have honey, we have goods. And myself, I participated in urban farming in the past. So if you ever come here, just learn some French. And I did a few times. I did a little bit of that farming, of course, a few times. And that's what it is with that. And that's why we gotta get that rock and roll, man. 24/7, you know. You know, wait for auntie to pass. So just, that's how my brain works sometimes. It just pops mathematically, you know. Even when I go walking now, sometimes I calculate the costs of the petrol. The oil, of course, that's expenses for the citizens. And of course, knowing that in February 2020, when I had COVID, of course, the petrol cost, the gas, average price of the gas was, of course, 93 cents. 93 cents. Can you imagine that? From 93 cents, now it's about 160. So basically, in other words, it's more than 80% increase, because if we calculate. So I'm wondering, of course, since I know that the salaries have mostly stagnated, how much pressure the cost of gas having increased so much, how much added pressure it adds on the drivers, and how much distance they have, and how much kind of they spend on their cars on a weekly basis. Of course, it's perhaps not a daily basis, but it varies, right? It's not a constant mathematical constant, it's a variable. That means it changes over a period of time, right? Because maybe they have the same routes, maybe sometimes they have to change the routes while they drive, or maybe they have to go Monday to Friday, or they work 4 days or 3 days or 5 days a week. And of course, it varies from the distance and rush hour and those points in times, which of course are variables. So the gas consumption varies, but there's an average. There's a weekly average, and then there's a monthly average. There's a daily average, weekly average, monthly average, and then I guess seasonal average of the consumption of the gas, right? So it could be X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, A, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is just something I gotta give a shout out to the construction workers, is they who build the houses, and of course the building of the houses here, such as this one. I always admire on the situation where we are now. I wonder, of course, on the situations where we are now, and that's why they gotta get that rock and roll. This one took a few months to build. Kind of interestingly enough, I like it. It just needs a little bit more color, and I wonder how much it is there. Allouer means to rent. That's French. Here in Quebec, one of the 63, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, always for the 63. In Quebec, we got that French. And you see, you got a gym, salle d'entraînement, that's gym. You got a station, you got a lot of Wi-Fi and common spaces, common areas. Then you got station for bikes. You got a lot of different facilities integrated there, see? So I wonder how much it is. 438-600-6438. If I would afford now, I would buy my anonymous friend a house by the water, by the river. As of course I have been wanting to buy her for a long time now. A house, back in a while now. A house, if I would be a billionaire, I'll buy her a house right away. By the river, I saw one for sale, exactly perfect. We're gonna scooch up today, and yesterday we went by the mountain, and we have our trajectory. So of course, basically, fundamentally, I would buy her that house because it has a weeping willow. So I wonder how much it is even here, how much it is the rent. And I would like to compare the increase over the past 3.5 years, let's say during COVID, or over the past 3.5 years, 5 years, I guess. Even my rent went up, but my rent, I cannot complain because it was lower than the maximum allowed, because here we got some regulations in Montreal, some rent regulations, which are of course important sometimes, to rent control, as it's called. We got to get a balance. I'm a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist. Pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist. Who's struggling? I'm struggling. And see, that's another danger for the children there if they come running and they put their foot there by mistake. Or we got a lot of work to do, We got a lot of work to do, our infrastructure across the North American Collective, and we got to rehabilitate a lot of public rehabilitation work to do. And mass financing via public-private partnership best. My idea is theories, protocols, initiatives developed over the past mostly 7-8 years since I got out of depression. Since I was depressed and suicidal. And I'm celebrating today until the 20th of September. So today being that is the 16th, I'm celebrating 8 years. 8 years ago, I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and I went with my anonymous friend. In August 2017, we took a 3.5-day bus ride from Montreal to Vancouver. Then we came back. In September, we took the train, 25 hours and 44 minutes from Montreal to Halifax by train, so that's a bit more than a day. And I got those tickets. I'm auctioning them for $1 million. I really moved there where I live now with nothing. I really had nothing when I moved. So most of my work is done over there and is done every day. on these marches in the sun and always meditating, because as an individual sovereign citizen who is part of this community of neurodivergence, my difference has been an impediment to continuous and long-term employment, to maintaining friends and having friends, long-term friends and all that. From now on, it's friends with benefits only, or pledge your legions. That is just something which we do, and I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. I don't like violence, and I lived it myself. I gotta go. I give a new deadline by October 31st to go retrieve the archives. To go retrieve my archives. Archives from the Jewish General Hospital. I was attacked by surprise viciously in the Montreal metro, was hit in the head, hit my head, had a dislocated right arm, shoulder. I was bloodied up, and my life prior to February 2014 remains much of a mystery. Most of what I know is from journals. I have a high school diploma. I didn't attend. I dropped out of college, I guess. I didn't go to higher education. That's a problem for people with Asperger's like myself, when a very high dropout rate. But a lot of Aspies are self-taught, and we're good at what's called our special interest, which needs to be, if you have somebody who has Asperger's, also known as HFA. So basically, we're on the spectrum. We're now considered since 2013, 2014, because Asperger's has merged with autism. It's considered to be on the spectrum, what's called on the spectrum of autism. So we're on that spectrum. I'm on that spectrum of autism, also known as HFA, high functioning autism, and I still use both the word, the denomination, the Asperger's. And what's needed to be known is that Asperger's and HFA is not a disease. It's not a disease. Yes, we can have difficulties in certain things of a social communication. The way we interact socially can be more difficult in an interactive manner, and understanding social cues, social dynamics, and non-written social rules, such as, for example, personal space, can be very different and difficult for us. So yeah, I was attacked by surprise. I gotta go retrieve on the October 31st. I gave myself a new deadline just to propose, of course. On October 31st, I gave myself a new deadline. October 31st, Halloween, so to go, of course, retrieve the archives and see what date was that when I was attacked by surprise. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head and had a dislocated right arm. I was bloodied up, and I don't like violence. I'm just hyper vigilant. My hyper vigilance, I guess, is tied to several of those abusive trauma events, being attacked viciously by surprise, and that's just something which I gotta do to cross the street there. And that's just something which I gotta be doing with that, man. So you gotta live with that, and you integrate certain things of life and of society, and I guess you sometimes just want to turn in the sun here. Usually we take by the other side there. So now we're gonna go, of course, to Canadian Tire. So we're gonna go, of course, to Canadian Tire, and we're gonna I want to check for a Roku. Actually, I kind of feel like going in the wilderness there by the back, and then coming by the other side. But unless we go to eBay, let's go to eBay, see the price. I guess compare the prices. I don't have to buy it today, I guess, if there's available. I guess if it's affordable, I can buy it. I changed my mind. So I was gonna go right by that side, but it's a lot of cars, so there's gonna be more pollution on the other side. So I guess I'm gonna go a little bit on the wild side in the wilderness there, where I love to see the changes of the. Oh, I see they're changing a bit, getting on that red. It's the last week of summer. It's always good to see red and green. I'm all 4 seasons, 4 seasons, and all terrain, and I have Asperger's, and that's not an illness. It's not evil, it's not bad, it's not malicious, it's not detrimental, it's not negative. It just has to be understood properly. And of course, it's been a journey for me, because I'm part of the 50% of people with Asperger's who are not officially diagnosed. But I've been semi-officially diagnosed by several individuals over the past, it's been 9 years now. 9 years, and I always refused to accept it. I always say no. But finally, about 3.5 years ago, I guess more than 44 months ago, I said yes, makes sense. This is what I have. These are I don't use the word symptoms. Some people use, I don't mind, but for me, it's characteristics and traits which can be odd, weird, bizarre, strange, tics. Not really tics, they're more ritual-like mannerisms, like ritual-like manners, just like we have the ritual-like routines. And for years and years, my routine has been pretty much sports and fitness, rock and roll. And I started working out after I because I was depressed and suicidal, and that affects Aspies a lot. But keep in mind that people on the spectrum like me who have HFA, high functioning autism, the depression and suicidal rate is very high. I like that one there. That's talent. That I say we should commission more who have talent like that. But I would commission more work team, like construction workers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, more, worker team, stuff like that. Worker team, like for example here, this 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess you have more than 4 there, but this one, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would put firefighters. I would put farmers, construction workers, and daycare workers, and all of them, if they can, we can be large on the other side. There could be other type of workers, IT workers and construction workers and public sanitation workers and grocery store clerks and warehouse workers and train conductors, rock and roll, choo-choo, and I'm an artist. I'm an athlete. I'm an athlete, AA. But of course, I am financially stressed. I couldn't afford $500 for a literary agent to publish. I've written some children's books with some workers' teams, and that's just how I rock and roll with that. And that's just how we are now, in the preposition of the life-affirming manners. And please don't pollute here. I know we have a lot, but this could kill a squirrel, a chipmunk. We have rabbits here, we have chipmunks, and there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to do it our individual selves, So I'm gonna go 5 minutes on Asperger's, and again, where we have to draw the line and commence in, it's not a disease. It's not evil, bad, or negative. It's just different. And sometimes I guess myself as an Aspie, I always it's okay, I guess, a little wolfy. Sometimes myself as an Aspie, I always have to put a little bit of that to let people know what I have, so that they don't, they know. And for example, it's personal space, right? If I come in conversation with somebody, I always have to take a step or two back, because it's something that I work more and more. For years I've been working on it, and it's a work in progress, because there's no medication for Asperger's. It's a lifelong condition, and the causes are unknown, right? It's unknown what causes HFA. It's either biological, genetic, hereditary, or not just hereditary, but it could be environmental, or just environmental, or both hereditary. And there's no medication, because it's not a disease. It's just these brain mutation makes us that we're different, and so we view the world we see the world differently, and social communication mannerisms are more difficult for us. For example, what would be difficult, and I'm not necessarily looking, but I'm single, and if you're black, you're white or black or rainbow. If you're a man, you're a woman. I'm part of the LGBTQ community. For as long as I can remember, I was in the open about it. I've never kind of really hid it. I don't know, at least for the past 11 years and more than 6 months, because my memory is triggered amnesia, blackout. And before February 2014, I have problems with my memory. I don't remember. I have trouble remembering my life prior to February 2014. I don't know if it was the mold, where I used to live in that small underground basement. It was like a tight prison cell. I guess I served my time in many ways. I did, if I say it, because it was so small. It was like a tight underground basement. I didn't even have a bathtub. The bathroom was so small, tiny small bathroom with a tiny shower, like a prison cell. It was really like even smaller, more worse than a prison cell. Where I don't know how many years I spent there. But it was kind of worse than a prison cell in many ways. And I didn't even have a kitchen. It was in the room, tiny small place on the island of Montreal. So I don't know how many years I lived there. Accordingly, many for 4 years, 5, I guess 6, 7 maybe. Something like that. And of course, this memory is, sometimes it comes back, But I remember, I have a very good memory, and you don't lose mathematical skills, language skills, linguistic skills. That doesn't affect memory. Just personal memory of me. Like high school memories, stuff like that. Childhood memories, although I have some from the books, the journals I wrote, the journals I kept some journals, so kind of have a little bit of journal, of course, the journals, personal journals. So I know where I was on 9/11. I was finishing high school, and I have a high school diploma, so I did graduate high school. I went to college, but I dropped out. And Aspie is a very high dropout rate for higher education, even in high school. High school dropout rate for people who live with what I live with, called HFA, Asperger's, also known as high functioning autism. It's very high, very elevated in the percentages in relative to the other population. Is very, very high in numbers. The numbers are super high. So are the unemployment numbers. So whatever I was doing and whatever doesn't matter, I guess I goddess because I got goddess it. I'm also a mystic spiritual seeker, and I have my reincarnations. When I get on the mountain, I get reincarnation flashes of past lives, and in dreams I was born in the United States 3 times post 70-76. Once I was born as a woman, twice I was born as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces 156 years apart. 2 different wars were 156 years apart. And you know what I love? I love these yellow flowers. Oh, this is nice here. Look at that. Just quickly look, see? Not so scented. Beautiful, but not so scented. And I love yellow flowers, how they pop out here. And you see, in the midst of the urban concrete jungle, Montreal, we got a little bit of that good. More yellow flowers there. And this is why I came to take the elderberry. I did 4 bottles. 4 bottles that came out good. Every bottle was different, but every bottle was kind of better than the other. I still have the 4th one. And next year, I'm going to try to do 44. 11 times the products. 11 times the produce. I'm going to try to do 11 times the produce. What I did now, 11 times. Next year. Here, elderberry. There was so much elderberry. A lot of it, like 90% got wasted. 90% got wasted. 4 rocks. More than 4 rocks, I guess. They got wasted. But I used it. I did elderberry juice, which came out better than I was expecting, to be honest. The elderberry juice came out better than I was expecting. Well, of course, I drank 3 bottles already, and I still have a bottle left. I'm guessing the end of the summer I'm gonna drink it up or hold it up for the winter. But next year I'm gonna try to do 44. I have to be here by June, from mid-June till about end of July. That's when you can harvest. There's so much elderberry here. From there to here, there's like hundreds of elderberry, they're kind of bushes, you know. They're trees, bush trees, and yeah, I did it, and it came out really good. You have to put some sugar and water. Basically, that's all you need. You can put some honey if you want, stuff like that. It's not just a one recipe; it's several recipes. So, back to what I was saying, where I used to live in Côte des Neiges in an underground basement. It was very moldy, lots of mold. That's what I remember. And I thought I moved in 2016, but it's 2015, July. So I've been living where I live now for 10 years. But that was it was really small, moldy underground basement. I guess it was affordable because I paid not that much rent. And I guess I retrieved, the documents where you sign. The documents where you sign. The documents, you sign the documents. Thank you for the thumbs up. You too, uncle. Uncle. Get those steps, get that jog, and friends with benefits only for me. You're black, you're white. Don't waste my time. I'm not gonna waste yours. Don't waste mine. And I'm not sexually frustrated. And if you're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, if I would be sexually frustrated, I guess I would be discussing it then. But I have a healthy, healthy masturbation. Masturbation healthy, and I stopped watching porn. I think it's gonna be 4 years soon. It should be 4 years. I gotta double check on different agendas for it, but it's been at least more than 3 years and a half since I last watched pornography. I don't morally object to it. I don't morally object to its production, or if you're of age, of course, you're of age. That's a different moral, ethical, philosophical question. The age. But I don't object to its production, people who produce it and people who consume it, because, but that's something which always is a topic of discussion for whatever X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the individual sovereign citizens who use it or don't use it, or who stop, like myself, and whatever the case may be. So it's just... And lust and sexual energy is just like aggressivity. Aggression has to be channeled, channeled. So you channel, you give venues, you channel. You have venues, life is short. That's why I say life is short. I could always live carpe diem every day since I died of COVID, and just don't, it's something that you have to suffer, I guess. And I suffered, struggled, was depressed, suicidal. I moved out of that place, thank goodness, guys. And I guess I got goddess it. I guess I was saved, because in the past February 2014, and before that, my memory's on that raw retrograde amnesia blackout. But that's already 11 years and 6 months ago. 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 7 almost. So that's all quite a considerable amount of time, you know. Look at those 44 birds in the sky. Birds, 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 got a goddess, kiss it, I gotta sing it, swing it. Look at the dance, dance hips for the empire really rise up in the republic, let it see ya. The sunshine, let it be ya. Gotta close down even the knees, gotta be up in the closer that you sneeze. Let me be up in the trees, let me see those bees up. Gotta swing those hips, let me see that roll the clock. That's a flock, flock, flock that you see that a highway up on me. And yeah, I rock and roll, I do geopolitics, I dance. Dancing is my favorite sport and fitness activity. And, you know, I moved out of that place and, you know, was a small place. And I guess I gotta retrieve the archives. I see if there was archives from the Jewish General Hospital when I was attacked by surprise years and years and years and years ago. And hit my head. I was hit in the head a few times and I hit my head on the concrete and I had a dislocated right shoulder, right arm. And I guess I got back up because of these flashes. I got back up, so I was able to push back, and I guess I survived. I guess I survived. That was that vicious surprise attack. A vicious surprise attack. Was a surprise attack vicious? So I survived that, and that's what I survived, and that is something which I survived, and here I am. You know, sometimes you survive, and things make you maybe stronger, or in fact, maybe just not stronger, but maybe stranger in many ways, you know, maybe stranger with all the scars, but whatever. Sometimes memory comes back. It's not that important. What's important, I was depressed and from about summer 2014 till summer 2017, and crossing Canada coast to coast, that made me had a revelation, an awakening, and said, wow, such a country, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, admire, mask, admire. That I started working out, training and exercising, that I started working out, training and exercising, that I started working out, training and exercising, and I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. I created my own workout training program system back in 2019, and I take a lot of pride, especially in my independent geopolitical theoretical analysis and geopolitical work as a Canadian, Quebec, and North American, always for the NORAD NATO complex. I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have proof. I have the video online. I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. I just want to give a shout out to the truckers and train conductors, and now see how my brain works, because geopolitics is my special interest. I always accord this point in time here with me evaluating those bushes and the beauty of nature and civilization, kind of in semi-harmony here. And I know that those trucks, see 1, 2, 3, 4 trucks, 1, 2, 3, 4 trucks, 1, 2, 3, 4 trucks, 4 on one side and 4 on the other side, the white ones there with a blue inscription, 1, 2, 3, 4, the one in the back. I know that they're going west because the camera's pointing west now, and the other ones are going east, and that's of course north, and now it's of course the camera's pointing south, right? So of course that is the fact that they're transporting so many goods. And see how my brain now operates, because geopolitics is my special interest. I integrated and I concorded, of course, in a geopolitical special, of course, to relate to the geopolitical realities of today, being that, of course, we're vulnerable, and due to the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, which is my theory, philosophy, and it's a frame of reference for a work tool for NATO. Give me a sec. For NATO, as a work tool for NATO, and I will discuss it today because it's super important, part of my strategy for the North American Collective and NORAD NATO together infused. But back to, of course, what I was saying to the truck about the highways, I gotta salute the truckers, that of course this is just a small area, right? This is just a small area here of Montreal, Hawk Island, Montreal, and this is just a small area whence, of course, we see the trucks going east and west, west and east, and they might carry bacon, they might carry bread, they might carry romaine lettuce, they might carry milk, my wafers, which I love to eat, ice cream, or peas and chocolate, and of course, they might be carrying tomatoes, they might be carrying potatoes, they might be carrying bananas, they might be carrying, of course, romaine lettuce, or other type of lettuce. They might be carrying juices, wine. They might be carrying goods, edible goods mostly, but also other goods, right? Like the remote control. I need to go check out the price for the remote control. So that's something which we got to meditate for. This is just a part of the highways, which all the highways of the North American civilizational complex, which I call all, of course, to apply to CIT, and of course as a mass public-private partnership where all the technological corporations for us to have across the 63 as we're going to fuse and integrate in the Imperial Democratic Public-Private Partnership Republic, that we're going to have across the highways, webcams in the cities, webcams, and all citizen integration. We're going to be able to navigate and see. I got to know everything that's coming in, mostly from the ports via ships of the oceans, carrying via ships. Most of the goods that enter Canada, United States, come via the ports, even now at the dock working operation on the clock, and of course via the airports, ports and airports mostly, although through Mexico there's of course the highways, because we connect our railways for the first time since 2023. We got merged at Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Rail, right? The CP, Canadian Pacific, they merged with the Kansas City, and that we created for the first time. I think it's the biggest merger maybe of railways in the world ever, at least from the North American, Pan-American perspective. But of course they have merged, and of course now we can go by train from Canada all the way to Mexico, halfway even deeper into Mexico, past Mexico City, the capital of Mexico, because of that merger. Before 2023 it wasn't possible. So of course now that I go a little bit into geopolitics, I'm just gonna take a step back and finish on Asperger's. So it's not a disease, it's not a mental illness, it's not a disease. And I remember a few years ago when I was working, people were whispering, say, you know, that's a disease in French, c'est une maladie, man. No, it's not a disease. And I know I'm different, and these people are with autism on the spectrum, we have this difference, but it's not bad, it's not evil, it's not negative, it's not detrimental. And no, not all Aspies are good at computers, okay? Not all Aspies are good at computers. The percentage of Aspies, people on the spectrum with HFA, high functioning autism, yes, the average is higher, I admit. It's 20%, right, statistically. So 1 out of 5. So that's pretty much high, who are very good at computers. 20%, more than 20% of Aspies, if not 25, which will render it, the fraction is a quarter, right? So if that's higher than like I guess the 5 to 2% to 4% of neurotypicals who are good at computers, or 1% of the neurotypicals, in the proportion of the ratio, mathematical ratio, considering that Aspies, myself, I'm part of a tiny community, it is not a lot. The officially diagnosed population is 0.44%. 0.44%, double, because the actual numbers are double. So it's 50% who are diagnosed only of existing Aspies, estimated population. So that means that if it's 50%, you got to double it, right, to arrive to the real number. So if it's 0.44%, you double it, so it's about 0.88%. So it's still less than 1% of the population. So it's a small, tiny community. It's not a big community. It's less than 1%. Right? It's less than 1%. So not all Aspies are good at computers. Most Aspies are good at those special interests. And even Aspies can turn their special interest into a career, such I will certainly for it. I mean, I'm an artist and athlete and philosopher and mystic and androgynous pansexual, great philosopher, intellectual when it comes to geopolitics, to the fact that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So, but that's because of this special interest. So it's for years and years and years to study the analysis of geopolitics. But I gotta say that I do know ancient history, and ancient history, of course, from ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, having lived there as a priestess, was the priestess. Pythia, who orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus, was the priestess. The Delphi, Pythia, the oracle of Delphi, was the priestess Pythia, who orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. And priestess or farmer was a man and woman, a man and woman, a man and woman, a woman, a man, a man and woman, a woman, a man, man and woman, woman, man, man and woman, woman, man. And now you get 50-50. I'm androgynous. Just gotta read one of my favorite poems, Three Glass Darkly, which is George Patton's poem, which I love, and Of course, it's based on his reincarnations, but he did not mention that he was also born female. As a matter of fact, about 2,600 years ago in a past life, previous incarnation, me and George Patton, we were married. He was my wife in a past life and I was his, vice versa. So I was also his wife in a past life. I was also his wife and he was my wife. So reincarnations passed aside, and of course that is the dimensions and of today, being that I live with HFA and have integrated, and I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend for gifting me 2 books on autism and have some special chapters on Asperger's, HFA, and one book specifically only for HFA, aka Asperger's. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, which was loaned for me because it was a library loan 4 times, and I gotta appreciate that. I was loaned 4 times, was loaned from the library, and thank you, anonymous friend. If I make a million, I'm gonna give half. That opened my eyes of how I am different, and this difference can open myself to vulnerabilities. So because of course I have these vulnerabilities as an Aspies, which Aspies we do. So we have to, because we're different and we see the world differently, and we have certain difficulties in social interactions, and we can be pretty intense sometimes, and it's super focused, super intense, super concentrated, super dedicated, super engaged in those special interests. Sometimes they take over our lives to the detriment of other things, such as doing things around the house, or preoccupying with fashion and clothing. Thank you, my anonymous friend, who's gifted me the greatest clothes that I have now. They just match so good for me. They just match very good, and that's something which I like, and I gotta salute the truckers. Truckers. They're going east-west here, and that's north-south. So I could say east-west, north-south, but hey, look at this. So nice, and they're doing a little bit of that grid, and they're transporting the goods. And every hour we should have everywhere computers, and where citizens can log in, or have centers where people can monitor all the highways across the 63, as we're going to get rid of the border and fuse as a mass public-private partnership, and to see everything that's transporting all the goods, the bacon, the cheese, the milk, the romaine lettuce, the chocolates, the potatoes, the tomatoes, the oranges, the grapes are my favorite fruit. I just got some grapes from Canada. We got those wild grapes, which I usually harvest in October or November over there. But as you can see now, my brain now functions integrally, of course, in the interconmittent, of course, integral aspect, of course, of all this east, west, north, south, how they're going now, and of course all these interpolations that, of course, they're vital to our North American civilizational complexes, continuing security, safety, liberty, and enhancement of freedom and joy and survival even. And we're open for sabotage and espionage due to the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, which I discussed in the past, and I've been working on it as a working theory. I think I introduced it about during COVID a few years ago in some of my videos, because most of my theories, protocols, initiatives, such as the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, which is relative to NATO and the potential consequences that it entails vis-a-vis taking action, concrete action, whether taking action or assistance vis-a-vis NATO member countries in all the dictums where we are now involved. For example, in the conflict of Ukraine, which is not a NATO member country, nor is Israel, Taiwan, or Pakistan or India, but nonetheless, this DMAA has to be integrated at all levels of NATO. I'm gonna come back to it and just gonna get a little bit of sun and salute the truckers. And this is just a segment, a segment of all the highways across North America. Imagine all 24/7 how many they are, and it's part of our integral, the truckers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the firefighters, the electricians, the plumbers, all those welders. It's all work. Sometimes it's just all this work which we try and kind of take for granted. And of course, civilization is a privilege. Civilization is a privilege. That was my thesis back in 2023. Civilization is a privilege. If you think about it, right? Civilization is a privilege. If you think about it into the concordium of the privileges of civilizations which we have, that civilization is a privilege. And of course, we have electricity, running water, the highways even. In the plateau of course, having the water, you gotta think about that. Just having running water is something of a privilege if you think about it in a certain manner, such as aforementioned what I said, right? Because civilization's privileges extend from having electricity and running water to, of course, these benches and the embellishment of the city. Those are all things which are concorded now, and so I'm not gonna go into that because after anybody wants a commission, that was my thesis, you know. My thesis back in 2019. I like how it is. See, it kind of, see how my brain now works? This is Asperger's one-on-one. So I was looking at this and I was counting, I was checking the 4 bolts there. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the size of those bolts and how many bolts there are, and if the distance between those bolts and those ones is equal, and kind of calculate, of course, whatever the dynamic is of the calculation here. So all the calculations, which it is, of course, the dynamic of all the societal aspects which we are now, is, of course, the Asperger's calculation that, of course, these bolts are of course all the same, but those ones are not. So see, you got 4 like that there and 6 here. See, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4 there. So what I was calculating basically is the dimensions, and I was trying to figure the size, the area, and the weight, kind of the weight of this structure, the weight. But of course it's only estimation because I know it's wood. So see, it's basically 1, 2 of these that are the same to make it into a, and you have a third one here. So it's basically, it's a triangle, right? So I'm missing information. I wouldn't be able to calculate, but however, what I can tell you is that it is an equilateral triangle, right? Equilateral, meaning that this side from that point A to B is equivalent to C and D, but not to that one there. But it can be a variation, in fact, although because it kind of looks equal, it might in fact not be if we look at the other side, although it does seem like it's an equilateral triangle, see? But the interjection of this triangle is here. The problem is that these two, see, they're tilted. See, they're tilted, right? This one's tilted and that one's tilted, but this one's straight. So it's basically a tilted kind of a ship, kind of a starship, but it's equilateral starship, equilateral starship. So yeah, this is just Asperger's, and if I guess so I would be with a fellow Aspies, we would have a continuing discussion for like just half an hour discussing, maybe debating whether it's not and double checking, because you got to double check, because I'm not perfect in math. I just do math in my head. Sometimes it just, especially when it comes to divisions, multiplication, and percentages. Where I excel most is percentages and fractions, I guess. Percentages is something that, for example, the ratio of percentage, I'll give you an example of a percentage, concrete example of a percentage that would be a concrete example of a percentage would be the price increasing of my wafers. So they increased in price twice. First, they went from they were $1 3.5 years ago. Then from $1 they went to $1.18. That's 18%. That's easy because that's 18%, of course, of whatever the calculation is. So now they went up again, 39 cents. But now they're 139. But the first increase was 18 cents. That's 18%. But from 118 to 139, it's 139 minus 118. So that's 39 cents and 18 cents, so that is 21 cents. So that's no longer 21%, right? Because the number fluctuates. So that is less in mathematics. So it's less. So it's about 17%, right? So that automatically it pops in my brain sometimes, sometimes very estimations and the cost and the production, of course, the percentages, you know. For example, like I said before, a priori, how much percentage is, of course, the gas consumption, right? So for example, let's say this car maybe consumes, I don't know, maybe how many liters, let's round it up, make an even number, 10 liters, not gallons, I gotta specify. 10 gallons of gas is too much. That's 40 liters because a gallon is 4 liters. So liters is 10 liters, not gallons, right? 10 liters, right? Let's say. So if they paid for 10 liters in 2020 February, they paid 93 cents. So that means for every liter. So that means that's for 10 liters, it's $9. $9.3, because you take the zero, right? You take the zero. $9.30. That's what it is with that. That's what it is with the go. $9.30. Right, $9.30, of course. So that is what they paid. For 10. For 100 they paid for 100 they pay more, right? Because if it's 93 cents in February, going back in time, for 10 liters to get 100 kilometers, let's say that is, assume that that is the cost, make the numbers decimal rounded up so that it's basically a little bit easier to kind of compute the numbers. So if that's the case, that car, meaning that it spent $9.30 for every 10 liters. Or if 10 liters is for 100 kilometers, that's the cost to travel 100 kilometers, right? 100 kilometers. And if it's for 100, then that's $93. But then that's times 10. So that's for 1,000 kilometers, right? That's for 1,000 kilometers. So 1,000 kilometers would cost $93. $93. That would be the cost. That would be the cost. So that would be, of course, the cost. $93, of course, would be the cost. $93 would be the cost. $93, that would be the cost of it. So, of course, if it increases in cost, that is just the parameter. That would be the parameter, of course, of the cost increase. So, for example, if this car is the same, that would be kind of the same. If it's more, if it's one more, then it's one more times 10, that's 10%, right? If that one's 12, that would be 20% more. So you just have to calculate 10%, right? So it would be no longer 93, it would be $93 plus $9.03, right? So it'd be 93 plus $9, that would be 108.6. 108.6. Makes sense? So that's the mathematics, but you have to go back a little bit to maybe revise the mathematics. And thus, if it's 10 cents each, that would be that car there would increase. That car there would increase. So this car there would increase, This car there would increase. So of course, it varies because not all the cars have the same consumption. But now you have all the variations, all the variables here. So all these variables here are all different variables. They're not constants. What is constant? What is constant? Constant is the price of gas, right? So the price of gas is constant. So that means that if the price of gas increased from 93 cents in February 2020, that means that now today was 166. So 166 minus 93, that's 6 plus 6 plus 6 point, you have the points. So that means, of course, that it is 66 plus 6, that is 74, about, so a little bit more than 74 cents. That they pay more per liter, each and every one of them, regardless of other. So that's the constant, is the price of gas. But the variables is how much each car consumes. So you have constants, mathematicals, and variables. So this I always do in my head when I march, when I walk, This is just Asperger's, it's autism, It's not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative. It's just that if I would be with somebody who's a neurotypical, we would have that discussion, that person would probably be like, bro, you're an alien. Are you an alien or what? No, it's just, I'm not an alien. I'm a human being. It's just how my brain is different. And our brains are different, and we have to celebrate the beauty in the brain difference. It's not that sometimes I'm direct and straightforward. It's not, Aspies we can be direct and straightforward, but it's not that we mean to offend, It's just, we have to be told, and we can be kind and compassionate. I have empathy and compassion. It's just that I, at least as an individual sovereign citizen with Asperger's, I show it by action, rather than verbal consolation. And just like me, I don't want to, when I say how I really feel, that I'm not so good, or that I'm moody, or that I'm financially stressed. Like somebody was saying on the camera, I said financially stressed, and the person said, I'm sorry to hear that. Why are you sorry to hear that for? Why are you sorry? It's not your fault. You didn't cause my autism, my Asperger's. You didn't make me lose 7 jobs in the past 10, in the past 4 years, and 44 jobs in the past 11 years that I only kept for 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few days. Because that's a problem for Aspies, maintaining long-term employment. So that can be difficult for people with Asperger's. Maintaining long-term employment can be difficult, but it's not their fault. So I have it on camera. The other day I was on the mountain and somebody said, I'm sorry to hear that. And it's just because we process different information, but that's just a standard of, the theatrics and the theatrical social conventions sometimes, which are just social conventions. And the way we're supposed to say, when even my friend warned me for years and years and years, you're supposed to say I'm okay. You don't say I'm financially stressed or I am financially stressed. I'm financially stressed. Or I don't feel so good. You're supposed to say I'm okay, but really, if you're not, an aspie would, probably most aspie would just say, of course, how they are, how they feel, moody or whatever, or financially stressed in the case. But that wasn't his fault, so I retorted right away. I said, "It's why are you sorry for it? It's not your fault. If you're gonna offer me some employment, some business, then yeah, that's good. That's concrete way to alleviate my financial stress, then I'll take it. But just don't console verbally if what that's gonna do. You know, it's just we're different. So this difference can be sometimes offensive or triggering, or just the things that we're different. It's not because we mean to, I don't mean to. It's just let me know if I can harm you or whatever. If I can do something for you, I will. But just don't say that aspies are evil, bad, negative, malicious, or that it's a disease, because you don't know, and a lot of people don't know what Asperger's is, and it's still a work in progress. In the 21st century, there has been a lot of movement, a lot of progress, but not enough, because it's still, for Aspies, we still are at, although we're a tiny community, we're at 80% unemployment. 80%, 4 out of 5. So that's 11 times more. So for every one of you, the 99%ers, there's 11 of Aspies unemployed. So I have no antagonistic feelings towards the 99%, towards the majority of the population, none whatsoever. We just have to build bridges. See that bridge that I'm going to cross there? Well, it's bridges because it's kind of double, and that's another bridge with different dimensions. But we're going to cross this bridge, particularly on the going south. So we have to build bridges, whether small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. Of course, just like when you order coffee or fries, right? Those are sizes. For example, today somebody ordered a medium coffee or fry, or small or large or extra large. Those 4 categories or sizes. Within those 4 categories or sizes, there are subcategories, of course. Love me these yellows, and the bees love them also. I see 4 bees there. Kind of see them blurred because I was prescribed some glasses, and that's what it is with that, and that's why we gotta get that rock and roll. So that is just the dynamics of the situation. And you see this yellow there and that yellow, and that is just the dynamics of the componencies where we are now to be, of course, interrelated for the love and the lust and the bees and the honey. And yeah, look at that beautiful sun, the king, my king at least, now rises and now sets, and again, so it's not a disease. And yeah, I just go, on my marches sometimes I calculate, but the variables are the cars, but the actual variable is the consumption of gas per kilometer, per mile, mileage per gas gallon. A gallon is 4 liters though, so that's different. That's why I said liters and kilometers and not miles and gallons, although that's a very worthy and co-equal. The ratio is the same mathematically, right? The ratio is the same mathematically. In actuality, it doesn't matter. Of course, the price of gas varies. Here in Montreal in Quebec is different than from Texas, New York, or Alberta is different. Alberta is, in Canada, usually traditionally is the cheapest gas. And supposedly we got tar sands. The tar sands are, although it is way too costly at the moment for the environment, but in theory, North America, we wouldn't need to import, not export. We would actually export to import gas because of the tar sands, but it's too costly. And there's the mountain. And of course, that is the situation. That is the situation where we are now, and that is just how we rock and roll 24/7, That is where we are. There we were yesterday, at the top of the mountain, which you can see afar off. We were right at the top, roaming in the darkness at night, as it is sunny now, getting towards the sunshine. But you see that downtown Montreal, Hawk Island, HAWK. See? Now we saw the city from above. We saw the city from above, and that's where we are. Yesterday we went atop the mountain there, Mount Royal, right at the top of the mountain, and got to salute our ambulance drivers with that rock and roll. And when you hear the ambulance driving, or when you hear the sirens, that's where it is, the mountain of far off. If you hear the sirens of the ambulance or the firefighters, the ambulance workers, the firefighters, ambulance, if you hear the siren, What do? You do 180 to the left, 180 to the right. So you turn your heads left or right 180 degrees. That's what you should do. Turn it 180. Turn it 180. Just to be prudent, if you hear the firefighters, the alarm of the fire trucks, if you hear the alarm of the ambulance or the police, security services police, you do the 180 and you slow down and you don't press the accelerator and you do not continue accelerating. That is just something which you don't do, and this is dangerous. If somebody comes with a bike right here and somebody comes with a bike and slips and goes right into the river, eh? Because sometimes I see, about 2-3 weeks ago somebody came by bike, so that's why I say this. I'm gonna do the citizen due diligence, or even running at night. Even running at night, it's a banana, and plus the banana peel is in this. The banana peel is in this, so you know we got public safety, public security. It's always a double trouble. And just because I'm on the bridge, I assess that this could be a risk, especially if somebody who's young, a younger child, and then passes the bridge, a teenager, or you know, just. I'm gonna disinfect my hands after, but it's because the banana peel is slippery, plus the other one is slippery, so they're both slippery. So you can just imagine, you can slip, and that's concrete, and that's of course that's concrete, and that's metal, that's steel. Maybe I saved somebody today. Maybe that's what I was saved by the goddess, and I didn't die there in that small moldy room of some temple below the ground. Maybe to save others, you know. Maybe to save others. By the goddess, I credit my surviving to the GODDSS. I praise the goddess of million trillions of names, you know. Trillions of names. There it is. There it is. There it is. So that's what we are, and that's what we do, and that's what we gotta get doing, man. And maybe now today with this deed, my balances are equal. Maybe I get that mod. So that's what we are. We're different, eh? And we have these routines as aspies, ritual routines, and sometimes we have these characteristics and traits which seem odd, weird, bizarre, negative, but they're not evil, they're not bad, they're not negative, they're not malicious, but they can seem a bit strange, you know, odd and awkward and weird. But they're not evil, they're not bad, they're not, you know. So where we draw the line is when aspies are characterized as bad, evil, negative, malicious. That's where we have to draw the line, you know, between when we have to reject that characterization, because there is not, right? So yeah, so we can, the problems we have, you know, we have mostly because our brains are different, so we process social information, sometimes social cues more differently. Sometimes we have trouble understanding, sometimes more than at other times, we have trouble understanding social language, social cues, you know, social cues. So sometimes we have to be told more directly ourselves, and we can repeat things 2-3 times. Or ekalela is repeating the same sentence and phrase that somebody utters. It's called ekalela. We might quote from movies, and we have these special interests, also known as obsessive interests, which they can preoccupy, they can pretty much take our whole time, basically. They can, with intensity, super concentration, we can be super intense, super concentrated when involved in those special interests. Usually 2 or 3. Me, it's my holy trinity. It's geopolitics 24/7. Sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, and even now I do a little bit of dance when I hear some music all the time. And rock and roll, always rock and roll. Rock and roll. Always rock and roll. So that's the rock and roll, and that's where we situate ourselves, and that's how we are, in the position of where we are to be, and the characterizations of the life-affirming matters, where we are, of course, in the ways that we can build those bridges. And me, I don't need lots of support. I just need a little bit, I guess, and more understanding than anything else, I guess. And it's like anybody else, some good loving. And my only stress now is really economic, financial, money-wise. And I had many jobs, even in the past years during COVID. Just keeping them was a problem, keeping the jobs. Sometimes it was 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few days, a few months. So that's the struggle. Struggle is also maintaining friends. So that's why I have the solution. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only. Stretch left and right. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours, Friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance to our family. Friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance. Friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance. And don't waste my time, I will not waste yours. And just so that I have an understanding, friends with benefits only from now on. It is September 16, 2025. And that's just financially stressed. Beside financial stress, I can twerk on that good dancing and rock and roll and geopolitics, and that's some good loving with that. And that's something which, of course, we have in the intermittent positions where we got to get doing on that double trouble, of course, appellation now to be, of course, circumvent to all the dynamics of the civilizational complexes where we are now to be loving and to be finding some solutions to Asperger's. And so these solutions for me are quite straightforward and simple. It's just friends with benefits only. And another problem for Aspie is kind of these four main problems: the lack of friends, which I got the solution, friends with benefits only. It's not that we don't get jobs around, it's that keeping the jobs, right? Maintaining the long-term employment is the problem. 80% of people with Asperger's are unemployed. You imagine how tragic that is, how unjust that is. 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, sometimes even higher than 80%. That's 11 times higher than you. And I have no antagonistic feelings again with the 99%. It's just we got to build those bridges. Sometimes it requires mutual effort, continuous reciprocal effort to build them. So that is just the exchange and a quid pro quo, I guess. But the other problem is high depression and suicidal rates is 9 times higher than the neurotypicals. It's 9 times higher than the neurotypicals. 9 times higher than the neurotypicals. It's 9 times. As unemployment is 11 times. So it's high up. Very high, very, very unacceptably high. Both. Well, I've been depressed, I've been suicidal, so sometimes some Aspies require medication, but what got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast. That event, just crossing Canada, was such a revelation, and I started, of course, working out, training, exercising after that. I lost about 80 pounds. 80 to 93 pounds I lost. Between 80, minimum 80, and 93. So I fluctuate because I'm up and down every week. But about that's how much I lost. So it's quite a considerable amount. At the highest I was about 290 something. Before, when I came back from the trip, I started working out, training, and it took a few years. And the other problem, of course, is, like I said, the high depression rates and suicidal tendencies, the lack of employment, lack of friends, and the dropout rate. From high school, a lot of Aspies, people with HFAs, dropout rates are high. of high school and higher education. Higher education of higher education, such as college. I didn't pursue higher education. Supposedly, I have a reference letter, very good reference letter from a high school teacher, which going back down before 2014, I don't remember, but supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College. Kingston Military College, I guess. Geopolitics was always part of my special interest. So those 4 high dropout rates from higher education and even high school. A lot of aspies drop out from high school because harm and bullying and not making friends, because you're different, or you make friends and they just don't call you to invite you anymore after a few weeks, a few months. That guy is different. He's not like us. But it's not negative or bad. No, we're different, but we're not, just sometimes just ask for some things. That's how we are, myself as an individual aspie. If you're a friend with benefits, you can ask not to harm anybody or criminal activities or anything like that. No, but in anything, I guess we could say, yeah, if it doesn't harm me, if it's hygienic, or get dirty, get back clean, rock and roll. The only demon I am is a rock and roll demon, but I'm not a demon, I'm a dragon. So that is where we are now, man. Happy, joyous, and that's what it gotta be. That's it. I'm gonna go inside here and come back. Wow. Roku, pricey. $34 for just the remote control. So I want to compare prices somewhere else because, wow. When I checked out a remote control, quite an invention, but Best Buy here in Canada, Canadian dollars, just for the remote control, it's $34.71 just for the remote control. That's pricey because I have Netflix, so I have it until 2 more weeks, but yeah, I cannot afford it. 34. I had a budget of $23. Yeah, I see financial constraints and electronics. I guess I'm gonna be more careful. Maybe I'll press too much, but I had it for a while. But I pressed the buttons. Maybe I should be careful, and from now on, just be careful. Maybe when I eat, I think it's my fault because I got grease on it. So I'm gonna take some responsibility. I think I got grease on it, but I'm gonna go check the price for it at Walmart. Yeah, $34.71. But online it said that's Canadian Tire 19. I'm gonna go tomorrow then a Canadian Tire. Does it have a Canadian Tire here? This was a Best Buy. The very customer service was very smiling and nice. I hope we get a raise and beautiful sun in the back. Yeah, no, wow. I don't know, I checked online and it said 19. So I had exactly with taxes, I had $23.75. 75 cents. So I had enough. I would have had enough to buy if it would have been 19.19, because with taxes that would have been, well, $34.71, and that's pricey for just the remote control. Just the remote control. Well, eh? Electronics. How does a remote control work? I guess it's lasers. It's quite a genius. Hey, think about it. Remote controls are quite something which are really cool, eh? And I guess we're still on remote control but a good benevolent one, I guess, from the sun, eh, in many ways. And anyway, so back to Asperger's, and very nice customer service. And I'm gonna go check a Canadian Tire here, so I guess I'm gonna go check here if they have, because that's my budget. Because I got a 20 to last me for a week, and then this one I had to put an emergency budget for the remote control, because I paid half of Netflix, so I don't want to go to waste, because I still have Umbrella Academy chapter season 3 and season 4 to watch. Season 3, the third and the fourth season. Season 3 and season 4 of so that's where we're going, and I don't want to film inside, but turn our heads left and right regardless. So that's Asperger's 4 main problems, and I got the solutions. And oh my goodness, this has to be filled. Look at that big pothole there. That a child, if they come with children, a child can just bump their feet there, and security. And look at that beautiful sunset. Just let me get in here. Of course, the children or the cars, even, you know. What a beautiful sunset. Auctioning these glasses, the underwear, the backpack, the shoes, the socks, the underwear, the shirt, and everything that I'm wearing. 7 items, 1 million each. That's 7 million for each. Well, 1 million for each, 7 million for all of them. 7. The hat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The socks and the undergarments. So that's 7 million. My anonymous friend. %, half. So we got to go here now, and of course we're gonna discuss geopolitics afterwards, rock and roll afterwards. But wow, what a pricey situation, man. That is really, I'm really surprised. I really thought I was gonna get it for 19, you know. I would have never thought it was gonna be so expensive. $34.71, just the stick. It's not the stick, the Roku stick, it's the remote control. And then she took the stick, and I said, no, I just need the remote control. And the remote control was on the side because she was gonna work her. She was very nice worker. I don't know, gender identification or whatever, but it was nice. Regardless, you know, sometimes just customer service, and that was just how it was. And those would be some green and red and yellow color. That would be so nice if they were colorful, eh? And that's where we are here. Oh, look, they're getting ready for the Halloween, man. I love the smell of Canadian tires. It smells so good. A bit cheaper at Canadian Tire. A bit cheaper. 25, but I gotta get it because I have to do something to get it, because it wasn't really mine. It was like a loan, you know, so I have to replace it. So that one even has the head for the Roku. So yeah, I know, I have to make an effort because it was a gift. But it's kind of like a loan, so, you know. Yes, my anonymous friend was kind of cool with that. And just the last place. So I guess if it continues the pattern mathematically from eBay, 44 meters to Canadian Tire, the price dropped by $9. Because here it was $25.52. $25.52. Right, so that was the price there. $25.02. So if that pattern continues, that means that it's supposed to drop. Oh, I lost my hair elastic. Here, what do they have? I don't think they have it here. No, I don't think this is it, but this is Michael's. Whatever the case may be. So if mathematically that would be that it would have to drop, right? So mathematically the price would have to drop if it continues. So it dropped from about $9. Well, actually it dropped $8 and something specifically, almost $9, because it was $25.43, and this was $34. Initially the eBay one was $34.71, and the other one was $25. So it was cheaper to buy it there. But again, they seem to be different qualities, because the packs, they were not the same packs. The packs were different. So I'm gonna go check a Walmart. I'm curious if the price, because what I have as a budget is $23.50. That is my whole budget. So I cannot really go over that. If I go over that, I have to go into my savings, which I think in the savings I have about 4. Well, I gotta hair elastic from my friend. I got about 4. So yeah, 23, 23.50, 23.50, 23.50. That's what I got, basically. $23.50. That's a budget, man. That's a budget. Oh yeah, I love those yellow flowers. So it was $30. It was $30.18. So I didn't buy it because I don't have the money. I don't have the money. So okay, so the price went up here. So the price, of course, it went from there. So if you calculate the amount of price where we're going, that means that the price went up from $25 there to $30 at Walmart, which they have several. And of course, that means that the price over there in the middle is the best price. So it'd be Canadian Tire. So that means that Canadian Tire is the best price for me to buy it. There's no better price for me to buy it. Better place for me to purchase it. If you calculate the ranges, they all differ by about $5. It's different by about $5 here at Walmart. So the $5, that means it's $4 and $5 differential. So it's how we calculate basically. So basically the most affordable would be for me, of course, to buy it over there at Canadian Tire. At Canadian Tire, that would be the best course of action. All things considered, you know, all things considered with that would be the best course of action. I just took this route because it's clear of cars here. See, there's no cars in there. Those cars get hit by cars sometimes with my clumsiness. Well, here there's no cars, and there's no cars, and we're going towards the river, and that's about that rock and roll, man. And now we know. So now I just got to find a few dollars to pay the tax because I'm missing about $7, $8, because I got $23.50. So yeah, hey, I gotta buy it because you know, my friend gifted to me, so I have to buy it. I have to buy it this week. So maybe tomorrow we're gonna hit it here tomorrow. Not hit it in, like, just buy it, you know, not anything HIT like that. Hit, rock and roll, you know. But I purchased it, I guess. If you order it online, interestingly enough, I saw that big one that says, should I go to check a Giant Tiger also? No, I don't think they have electronics. No, they wouldn't have Giant Tiger. Would they have? But I will treat myself to the fourth place where I go. I'm just gonna give myself 3 candies. 3 candies. Well, I'm not gonna get candies actually. I'm gonna get wafers, $1.50 wafers, and that's gonna be my $3.50. So that means that if I spend $3.50, I'm gonna be having to have about 11. But that's my budget. So that's gonna be my treat after my workout. $3.50, and I think I have at home. I have enough to buy the Roku. I think I just have enough to buy it from Canadian Tire. That's what I'm gonna buy it right there, you know. That's what I'm gonna buy with that. That's what I'm gonna buy it for. And that's how I'm gonna drill it, and that's how I'm gonna get on that go, man, you know. Canadian Tire. That's what it's about. So that was the prices. So the prices was at eBay, $34. Then Canadian Tire, the price went down. And then at Walmart, the cheapest price. But I have to say that the Walmart remote has voice. So it gives special editions. So it gives special editions because it has voice. So if it's voice operated, that means that it has extras on it. Extras. Pardon, sorry. Oh yeah. Bienvenue. Help out a little bit, you know. Help out a little bit. Give some chatty, and I got 4. I didn't go over budget, so I got these special, less than $5. Not bad. The prices increased. These are nice red chairs, nice red ones. So the prices increased. You know, that is something which we have, of course, to be in all the appellations where we are now. We'll get it on the go. Wow, look at that. That's a Marbite. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's, what is it with that, and that is something which we gotta get drilling, but that's a pothole, and gonna put these in the backpack, or we're gonna go right there in the corner. I got 4, 366. So I'm gonna have leftovers. I'm not gonna eat all 4, but gonna have it on the go with that, and that is something which we're gonna put in the backpack. Tie my hair and go wild up. That is something which, of course, I'm gonna disinfect my hands because I touched a few items, so it's always good to disinfect, you know. But I'm glad I came to check for the prices, you know. All that I gotta do, of course, we gotta go do now, and that is something which we gotta get doing now, man. Disinfect. Disinfect. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's slimy, but this little works. It's hand antiseptic, so I'm gonna disinfect because they took it out. I wish they would have kept the hygienic protocols of COVID, you know, because we got bacteria, germs, microbes, and that's 1, 2, whoops, 3, and 4. So for all these went up in price. This one used to be 50 cents. Now they're 66 cents, 63 cents, 63 cents. But that's 26%. Because 13 cents for 50 cents is, of course, a ratio, double. That's 13 cents. Double's 26 cents, so that's 26%. So more than a quarter, 26%. They went up in price, percentile-wise. This one as well used to be 50 cents. Now it's still not bad, 63 cents. And this is $1.25. This is from France. So it's not local, but $3.66 for these 4 is still good. Gonna backpack them, and just gonna put in my put it back there, tie my hair. Tie my hair. I'm gonna go get it, man. Go get it by the left, by the right, and in the middle, and that's what we're gonna get doing, you know? Super important. That's nice, and that's always, hi. Thank you for the smile. Looked at me in a beautiful smile with that, and oh, I think it was the worker there. Probably, I give permission to people to laugh at me, you know, because I know I'm different, but I'd rather people laugh and have fun than, you know, causing violence and stuff like that, harming each other, you know. Because I don't like violence, but so who's this weirdo? Yeah, I'm weirdo. And I'm not bad, negative, malicious, you know. I'm just financially stressed, but now I'm joyous for that candy. That's gonna be my reward, you know. The problem with me is, you know, I'm looking for friends with benefits only, but I wouldn't know when somebody's man or woman is interested to take it for friends with benefits, you know. Besides my sexuality is kind of a comedy also, like very funny, you know. I guess that's like comedy, that's not sex, you know. That's more like haha comedy, but yeah, I can do that, I guess. Consent 18 plus though, 18 plus, you know. But yeah, but I'm not looking, you know, specifically. If I'm going to propose again, special marriage, I gave a deadline October 31st, but I'm not really looking specifically for, but I wouldn't say no, you know. Friends with benefits I would love to have. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And now I check the prices, I kind of know where they range. It was kind of, it wasn't clear on the online, you know. Online it wasn't clear. It didn't seem like they were the right prices online, because they showed like 19, even 9.98 for Walmart, and now I go and it's okay. There's the voice activated, but I don't need voice activated. I really don't need voice activation, you know. I have no need for voice activation and that stuff like that, but there is something where we have, of course, to be is at, of course, the left and the right, and all, of course, the situational projects where we are now in that domain, you know. We got to get it on that left and right. And see, I'm just assessing a little bit of this here. Wow, there's a lot of work we got to do. See our potholes, this, look at that. This pothole 1, 2, 3, 4 big ones, and then you have smaller ones as they go there increasingly. But that's just something, and I love those cranes and construction workers. And now I'm gonna just finish on Asperger's. Again, it's not an evil, bad, or negative. It's just different. It's just different, you know. And that difference is not bad, evil, or maleficent, or negative. It's just how we are, of course, in the situational direction where we are to project and to build these bridges, which we have to build concomitantly on the side of the situational awareness of all the civilizational aspects where we are, of course, to be on the go. And that is just something where we have to do together to be building bridges, basically small, medium, large, or extra large. Whether we build small, medium, large, or extra large, small, medium, large, or extra large, small, medium, large, or extra large, whatever the cases of the size of the bridges which we build, we have, of course, to build the bridges. So it is those building of the bridges which we have, of course, to meditate, and of course we have to advocate in building, because we have to build the bridges whether we want to or not. And of course those dimensions of building them requires, of course, a strong preposition where we are, of course, inside as a look in a beautiful sunset. I always love, of course, that beautiful sunset to be, and it's something which we got to be building ourselves in all the aspects where we can navigate the Asperger's versus vis-a-vis the neurotypical. And of course, look at that beautiful sky. It's just beautiful. As you look now, I'm trying to gaze how beautiful the sky is. And of course, it is quite a beauty where we have, of course, in this point event in this life of time now, that myself being different, I wouldn't be able to tell really when somebody is interested. That's the problem with yours truly, you know. I wouldn't be able to know. We have to be let known, of course, in more the positive side of the aspects of where we are now. But that is just something that I'm not specifically intently looking for. So to finalize on Aspiness, it's not negative, it's not bad. See, so many things to see across Canada. Wow, look at that. Well, we passed by Niagara Falls in 2017, but it was a brief stop. It was like going passing by. We changed in Thunder Bay. We changed buses several times when we went in 2017. So we have some problems. We have some issues, but those issues have no medical solution or no. There's certain therapy for ASPI, such as, you know, knowing when to speak, when not to speak, when to have, of course, when not to converse, and how to speak. And sometimes we tend to cut off people. It's not that we necessarily want to cut off people, but with my friend I always say apologies, sorry, speak attentively, and apologies. And that's it, of course, in the projects where we are now, of course, to be, you know, the dimensions where we are, the size of the situational awareness of this difference that we have, of course, to counterpoise. And sometimes it just requires a more direct, overt manner, sometimes a more subtle diplomatic manner. And I guess this is something we constantly have to work on as ASPIs, that this difference is not negative or bad, it's just it is different. And so we are different, and thus we have to build bridges. Those bridges Why is it not turning for the pedestrians there? I'm gonna cross the other side, I guess, and then go from the other side. So yeah, those are the issues which we face. High unemployment. It's my turn to pass, buddy. Not yours. I got 19 seconds, 20 seconds, 19 seconds. See? No need to honk. You're in the wrong. See? I had plenty of honking. The car's worth $1 million. It's not worth it for the body. You know, the body's more. See, I had way more seconds. Look, I even had 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1 until I got here. So he honked me. The citizen driver honked me over there, but he didn't see. He should have looked, of course, that it was the pedestrian side. You know, it was the pedestrian. It was me. I was supposed, of course, to have priority. So the priority was relegated to my crossing and the pedestrian, all other pedestrian crossings. How much is the gas here? 169 for efficient, 161. 161. It seems that it went down by 5 cents, unless it is different. It could be, of course, that is difference from now, and of course that difference is, of course, interjected where we have the situational awareness of the interposition, where we are now in the dynamics, where we are concomitant to all the civilizational aspects, where we are to be building, of course, the blocks on the situational awkwardness, where we are a bit awkward with the social skills and mannerisms, but that can be counterbalanced by just, you know, letting an aspie know if it is how it is up in the show, you know. So that's just how we are and how we're gonna ride it, I guess, until the end. So we're going to cross the bridge there and then come back by the other side and do that zigzag a bit, a little bit of that zigzag, and try to navigate some tough geopolitical. Perhaps not, my philosophies are not so tough to understand, but they require a certain level of intellect, right? They require certain introspection and evaluation and some knowledge about geopolitics. So I'm going to finish on Asperger's. Asperger's, I guess we're going to do a checkup in the coming days, and meaning that I have to get about $30 to get the remote, and $30, of course, to get the remote, and something which we have, of course, to evaluate, getting the remote side of things. When we have to evaluate that, we have to get it, because it seems to not be working anymore, and I think I'm at fault because of the grease that I put on it. So I'm going to be more careful with the other one. I'm gonna get, and I have to get it because it's my friend, you know, who gifted, and I wanted to go to circus. I had put money away to go to circus after our hour, because I've been wanting to go since so many years now, and COVID hit, I wanted to go, but then I didn't go, and I made friends. I lost the friends from the LGBTQ community with which I wanted to go there. Circus is an after hour in Montreal, and I wanted to go. I never went, I guess, and I have some writings in my journal, but I don't know, supposedly when I did go like 4 times, 2 after hours, I think celebrating my 18th birthday, and then something like that, but I don't remember, because my memory before February 2014, which is it's more than 11 years and 6 months ago, that's already high back in time, so that's the problem. So now that I evaluated 3 different places, I'm just thinking, where can I try to look for the Roku remote somewhere else? Where can I try to look for the Roku remote somewhere else? Online, no, because I don't use. Online, no, because I don't use. I only have PayPal. I don't have a credit card, and with the debit card, you know, I'm just gonna get it on the love now, to get it on the go, and that is something which we have, of course, to be crossing safely, you know, because I gotta keep the right side. Eh? When you are outside, you keep the right side, just like driving, you know. It's something which, just like when you drive, you keep the right side, you know. Just when you try to pass somebody, you go to the left or to the right, and keep it civil and cordial. And see, you got beautiful lights there. It's a beautiful place. So many places where you can go here in Montreal and discover. And I spent a few years, I guess, with 1 foot in the streets, 1 foot in the libraries, and depressed, suicidal, and I survived it. And I'm very proud of my geopolitical work, which we're now gonna get into. We're gonna finalize the aspie chapter, but it's important. And you know, aspies were not that many in the world, less than 1%. and we have to build bridges with neurotypicals because we're neurodivergent, and we have these differences that can be there can be a reconciliation, peaceful resolution, reconciliation between us and you, and we have these dynamics where we have, of course, the pleasure bound, where we are open for business and pleasure in all the majestic, of course, appellations where we are now, the congregantly be, of course, as an individual. It's an individual, part of this collective, and the individual sovereign citizen, part of the collective, is always building bridges in different forms, shapes of forms that can be co-equivalent to mutually beneficial outcomes. Leave the baggage at the door now, leave the baggage at the door, leave the baggage at the door. We're entering my kingdom, my domain, my realm, geopolitics. Geopolitics is the study, the analysis of geography, interrelation with politics. It comes from the Greek word geos, politikos, geographical region, and from polity, from state, city-state, originally from the city-states of ancient Greece, which had a republican, democratic, or monarchy, or dual militaristic monarchy, a two-king system. In ancient Sparta, of course, was a more cratocratic system, right? It was type of a military dictatorship, but it was a military dictatorship based on hierarchical, aristocratic type of. It was a unique type of system in the whole world. I don't think anything similar has existed, but in many ways parallel to the Spartan. I guess we also mystify many geopoliticians or philosophers or historians specifically. People, it was history. When you involve yourself in geopolitics, the study, the analysis, or developing geopolitical theoretical strategies like yours truly, mostly for the North American collective, but extended to the NATO complex, to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to the NATO complex, is of course something which we have, of course, to be open to saying that we can't be always certain about the Sparta, how he was from Lycurgus, from the time of Lycurgus to about when its dissolution originally occurred. So as the dissolution of Sparta originally occurred after, of course, a few hundred years, circa after the Peloponnesian War. So of course, being, of course, in the remission side of the things, where we got to be the dynamics of all the situational awareness, that the Spartans were a unique way of, they had a unique way of governance. They had a unique way of governance, right? Parallel to the ancient Greeks and other systems. They had a dual monarchy. It was a semi-mystic as well, Oracle of Pythia and Delphi, where I was, orated in the Oracle. No, not the Oracle of Pythia. Pythia was myself in a past life, and orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus, but the other type of festival, of course, situations where, of course, were in accordance to their ceremonial rituals and the helots, and I'm not going to discuss Sparta, just suffice it to say. My specialty, however, is the 20th century mostly, although we can go back to other centuries. My specialty is 20th century and 21st century, of course, on a daily basis. So where we begin is my prediction back in 2019. My prediction back in 2019 is, of course, where we commence, where we begin. That's where we commence, that's where we begin. In 2019. That's where we commenced 2019. In, of course, 2019. So 2019 in October, that's where we commence. Where I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. So that's where we begin. That's where we kind of debut. The debut of the debut. So the beginning of the beginning predates that date. But for what's important for us today is the past years which have unfolded geopolitically, which of course traverse and of course go parallel, of course, in a similar manner to what, of course, what my scenario of 2019, October 2019, had evaluated, had concordantly put as an evaluation, as a work that I did back then in October 2019, which had finalized with the conclusion that there was a World War III coming, an international conflagration. The world order as we know it will come to an end, which is it has. And if you look back at 2 weeks ago with China's mass military parade, that was a symbolic military parade, which China kind of stated openly we have ended the United States hegemony post Second World War. And of course, over the past 44 years, a little bit more than 44 years, since about 78 when China opened up with the Deng Xiaoping post Mao Zedong, after Mao Zedong's departure, after Mao Zedong died, because Mao Zedong ruled China for 27 years after its foundation in October 1949, right? And ruled it for about 26 something years, 27 years, let's say 27. And of course that's where the appellation said that that's where they, with this military parade of this year, where Putin and Modi and of course North Korea leaders and other leaders were invited. So they had of course showed the world basically that they have ended the United States hegemonical rule, the United States hegemony, and both Russia and China of course aligned themselves, even more powerful alliance they had built over the past 3.5 years, which symbolizes the end of United States hegemony as we know it. So now I'm just gonna hydrate a bit. We're gonna get some of that hydration here. Hold on. Gonna get HYDRATE. I'm gonna continue the geopolitical, gonna make sure that I hydrate properly. This I'm not gonna waste. I'm gonna drink 500 milliliters now. And some more. So we're gonna drink a bit more than 500 milliliters because it was hot, and we're gonna finish. It's a few hours into my march, and it's gonna be a few hours more, you know. And fill it up and have it to go, you know, have it to go. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Imagine brains and muscle it took for us to have this fountain here. Just do a meditation, eh? Brains and muscle, the steel, the aluminum, the components, and the brains and the work, the arbeit, the workers. I'm gonna put this on the back rack and took some work to build it here and construct it, and quite interesting. All underground, all underneath. There's so much which has been built underground. The tunnels, the systems for us to have clean water, which kind of we sometimes take for granted, some more or less. But that is a privilege of civilization. Just there, not just me, but it's not just for me. But at this point in time event, I had taken water, drank water, and refilled my bottle. So it's something that exists underneath our big cities of the coming of our empire of the 63, the North American Collective, eh? Think about it, all underground, the existing structures, which of course define our underground structures, are concomitant in relation to having the privilege of civilization, and one of them is Not just the light here, but thank you Hydro-Quebec, go Hydro-Quebec, build some more dams. Interesting enough, by Providence we got 63. And of course the water system. They have filtered water and the canals. The canals, see? So that is a privilege of civilization as well, which thank you public workers of the past 20th century. So back to geopolitics, but it's important. Hey, public works is a major geopolitical development. It contributes to our geopolitical security, safety, and future dominance. BDD, though, benevolent dominance and dominion via my bipolar strategy for the North American, for the BDD of the world, via fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Democratic Republic complex, via the debt fusion theory, citizen integration theory, and the DFT Democratic Fusion theory. You know, yeah, gonna come to that, but now back to 2019. So I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration. An international conflagration in 2019. In 2019. That's when I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration in October, and I have the proof. And consequently, I also created a workout training program system made, created, and designed to go with such a scenario as the aforementioned World War III scenario, aka international conflagration. So it was an academic, scholarly, intellectual, because around October, November, I do the annual, big geopolitical annual revision of events, right? About October, November. So that's what I concluded based on several parameters, and one of the important points which I always bring was, and of course this kind of course, occurred and happened. So I said, because of unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, that's of course what I say, the unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, of which are many, but one specifically, or several specifically, was during the Cold War period. And of course the Cold War period lasted between 1947, about March 1947 and December 1991. So the Cold War period lasted for about, I say 44 years and 9 months. 44 years and 9 months. Some say less. No, some say more, actually. Not a lot, not a lot say less. Most agree with the 44, almost 45. I say almost 45 years, the duration, the period of the Cold War. Some say 45, 46 even. I place the Cold War, but I'm not stuck. I'm not able to say, oh no, or to argue much about that. I say almost 45 years. You want to say 45, 46? Yeah, I don't mind. I just don't object. It's not something that's, a year more. It's not something, or a few months more. I say it lasted between March 1947, the Cold War, and December 26th, 1991, when the dissolution of the Soviet Union occurred, right? Or began, but that's the official date of signing of the perestroika by Gorbachev to officially commence the dissolution of the USSR, the United Socialist Soviet Republics, into Russia and the other 15 SSR, Soviet Socialist Republics, of which there were 15, There were 15. So, here I always meditate on when I see this, and always meditate about the public work, see how they got a lot of work to do. So thank you public workers, we got mass work to do, and underneath we got so much work and arbeit. Public workers, we need to mass finance, mass public works, and that's why we need my brothers and sisters to do their criminal rehabilitation. That's why we need my brothers and sisters to do their criminal rehabilitation. The Criminal Rehabilitation Act. To do the Criminal Rehabilitation Act, super important to do the Criminal Rehabilitation Act. Super important to do the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act of the 63. Not in order just to build the 44, but to build mass public works such as this, that enable us to have water, to have potable water in our homes. All these structures, metal and steel with brains and muscle underneath. This is part of a geopolitical strategy. We gotta have the best of the best of the best. And, sometimes we improve, sometimes we got a little bit of Sanivac. See, it's red, my favorite color. And now I can go in, and so although it's smelly a bit, that's what we got to get doing right here. We gotta get doing, and gotta close it, and it's got water, and I'm grateful for it because I gotta pee, So I'm gonna go to the washroom myself. Gonna see you in a bit. Gotta wash those hands right here. And they got a good, see, it's very good, red. My favorite color, and it works well, so, and very fearful. It smells so good also. It's contrast with the smell of the thing. And here we got the drying, so we're gonna dry the hands. We're gonna close that, close the lid. And there we go, dry the hands, and that's it, see? There's a board, this we're gonna push a bit. There's one more, dry the hands. Hands are dried, and look at that. It says made in the USA here, see? Made in the USA, see? So probably John. Oh, I think we make them in Canada also, but this is from Whiting, WHITING, Indiana.com. How many were they produced? And we got a little bit of mirror. Close that, that's done, and there we go. Nice safe sanitation, close it and keep it clean, because it's for others as well, so I think we did well there. But it's Poly John, United States. I wonder what that number is there. Maybe is the number of the production. This was from the manufacturing. This is an ASPE thing, See that it says LAV line on 00296. Maybe that was the manufacturing date. Not the date, on the date that it was manufactured, maybe that was the 296th. That's what I wanted to say. On the date that it was manufactured, maybe that was the 296th. So that is something which, of course, we appellate, of course, in the civilizational complex, what we do now. And, of course, the appellations with the drills is something where we got to get drilling on that situational awareness. So this privilege of civilization, I'm glad that was in the corner, came out right in time, GIT, just in time, some things I guess do. And yeah, it was smelling like urine, smelling a bit like that shit, but it contrasted with, of course, the other smell of the other things, which we gotta get drilling on that, and we gotta get drilling on the go, for the left and for the right and for the XYZ on the situational awareness, where we are on that loving side of things, where we involve ourselves with the civilizational complexities of our civilization, when such as a boiler that we need to have our daily lives. See, for example, this boiler. Let's see. So this is, I don't know too much about the boilers, but see, this is made in Canada. The brains and muscle who made it, giant. 40 Lesage, 40 Lesage, Montreal Est. Usine Géant factories, giant factories. Let's check it out and support local. Giant INC 2014-0303. So that's more than 11. That's March 3rd, 2014. I guess this is the date of manufacture. So that's 11 years and 5 months ago, right? We're from Canada. So see, there is in giant factory 40 Lesage, Montreal East. So it's manufactured in Canada, right? So that's 11 years and some ago. Interestingly enough, I remember in March, because this March 2014, I went to see a movie. The Rise of the Empire. Assuming perhaps a dragon as well, who became a dragon also, and perhaps a warrior as well, and maybe a great general as well. But before that, so that far in my memory, then before that it blacks out. So before February 2014, so that's old. That was 11 years. So interestingly enough, prior to that time, my memory is black out. Prior to February 2014, February 2014, my memory is on the blackout, so whatever the case may be, these flashes of trauma and that vicious surprise attack, which I survived and live with my scars, and that's why I'm hyper vigilant. But it's not necessarily fear, but it is hyper vigilance. Look at these beautiful flowers. 1, 2, 3, 4 beautiful white flowers. Oh, the other one closed. They're closing when it's not sun, so there's more than 4. It's not just these 4, but 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 there kind of look like a triangle. These 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4. These close at night, Like they close at night. I guess they close at night, because of the night shade. So whatever the case may be, I guess they gotta get on that go, man. Something which we gotta get on that situational awareness. So it's the flowers, I forget what their name is. I gotta get better with flower names, really. I know a Latin name pops in alba white for alba Latin, alba floralis margoliatas doratus. So the kingdom, the empire, and the regale, all that. It's part of the Latin classification. So back to geopolitics now. So I predicted what's happening now back in October 2019. October 2019, which is just before I had COVID back in 2020, February 2020 and March 2020. I had COVID and I survived COVID. I got the shots. I got 3 shots. I got 3 vaccines, triple vaxxed. I keep the protocols of hygiene as much as I can, and I'm gonna take an alleyway. I think, I think 9 years ago was the last time I passed through this alley at night. 9 years ago. 9 years ago. And it's interesting that boiler that somebody had used was fabricated in 2014, March 3rd. That was the date of fabrication, March 3rd. It's unopened. This could be useful. So March 3rd, 2014. And just a thing I remember in March, I went to see a movie, and I think it was on the South Shore. The South Shore, the newly placed, well, now it's not that new anymore. But back then it was the on Boulevard Rome Boulevard, where I roamed in a past life in ancient Rome as a priestess and as a legion, part of the legions, and as in the Senate and philosopher and sacred prostitute, and many past lives, many incarnations, a man, a woman, a man. You get that 50-59 anyways. I went to see Quartier des 30, it's called Quartier des 30, and around, I think, March 20th, I went to see a movie. For the last time and only time that I went to see the movie there, at a big movie cinema, and just before that date, I go back 2014 March, that's what I remember, and before February 2014, my life is blackout. Raw retrograde amnesia. Sometimes it comes back, Sometimes memory comes back and you lose it. Maybe the mold, maybe I was a junkie. Maybe I did drugs. Maybe I was an alcoholic. Usually, sometimes alcoholic consumption. If I was drinking for like 4 years every day, then I was blacking out on alcohol, maybe alcoholism, or trauma to the head, also concussion, trauma to the head, prolonged disease, and drug consumption or trauma. I have these flashes, of trauma, and I live with these scars, and I'm joyous today. So, and I am calling all to support the Dream, the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, the public private partnership for the 63. Now I'm going to discuss back to geopolitics, because that's more important, my work, in my personal life, who I was before 2014. I'm not that person anymore, and because I'm being reborn with every step. Adrian Hanna Dragon. Whoopee. Keep my name out of your mouth unless it's for a blessing. And certainly I don't want to get sprayed. And that would be... I don't want to get sprayed. You're beautiful, but I don't want to get sprayed. But it's not that I don't want to turn back for nothing. So what do? Do I go on the side? I don't want to get sprayed. I don't have the money for tomatoes, to take a bath. I know you're beautiful, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess if it goes there, is it going which side? Tick, 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 tick. Tick, 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 tick. They're beautiful, but I don't want to go back to... Thank you. Love you from afar, Tick, 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 tick. There's the skunks. They smelly, beautiful, black and white. I played black and white on Rainbow. They were so beautiful, but face to face with the skunks. That demon smell, demon smell. I smell a demon smell. Out of rock and roll, you know you bail. Anyways, interestingly enough, it was just never face to face like that with a, from memory. My memories before 2014 February's kind of irretrievable for the moment, and it's blackout and question mark, but that's 11 years and 6 months ago. So I have a very good memory. Just more important is the dictums now and what I have to say about geopolitics and my theories. So I predicted what's happening now in 2019. On a general premise, one of the more important aspects to remember is that my prediction was that due to the unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, I predicted that those conflicts were going to re-begin, recommence, restart in the 20th century. So what's happening now in the world was, if you look at the world, many unresolved conflicts from the 20th century have in many ways, turn your heads left and right when you cross the streets, have in many ways restarted, right? Have in many ways restarted. 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 If you look at what's happening in the world now, many conflicts are dated from that 20th century and have restarted. If you look, of course, at the Russia-Ukraine, you know. Illusions, eh? If you look, of course, at the Russia-Ukraine, that's a 20th century conflict. Illusions, eh? That's a 20th century conflict. It's a conflict from the 20th century. And of course, that conflict from the 20th century, it's a Cold War period conflict. And of course, that has restarted. That has restarted, you know. That conflict has restarted. That conflict has restarted. And of course, the restarted of the conflict is a 20th century, you know, conflict which has not fully even comprehend how, the comprehension of it is that I can't fully assess it because I'm not on the ground with 300 men and women, right? So I can't fully assess the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Because if I would be on the ground with 300 men and women, then I would be able to assess it more. But since I'm not, I cannot fully make an assessment, right, of the whole conflict as it is developing now. And by the way, that's a metro station. What metro station was that? Yeah, that's a metro station we just passed there. I just want to check the alley. So back to what I was saying is that, of course, the conflict of the 20th century, you know, Allard. C'est quoi la station? Excuse-moi, c'est quoi la station de métro qui est là? Hein? La station de métro qui est là, comment ça s'appelle?
Metro Monk.
Oh, c'est M-O-N-K, eh?
Yeah.
Monk. Okay, Monk, thank you. Oh, oui. Okay.
Droite ou à gauche.
It's a Monk, M-O-N-K.
Yeah,
Thank you. I was just, didn't come to me. Thank you so much.
Metro Monk.
Yeah, I'm not going to take it. I'm just going to walk back. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Monk. So that's Monk over there. Monk metro station. That's the one that's there. M-O-N-K. Oh, I haven't gone to that metro station. It's been years. It's been about... So last time I passed that alley in the dark was 9 years ago or something. 9 years ago. So I had COVID in February 2020. That's more than 5 years. And when the video dates back to October 17th, 2019. So my video when I predicted an international conflagration dates back to October 2019. October 2019. October 2019. October 17 was the first video in the series of videos, of course, where I had concluded that humanity was set towards an international conflagration. So October 17, I had concluded that humanity is set again towards an international conflagration. So that's when I created and produced the workout training program system, officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. By that official title, it also has several nicknames, such as I have nicknames: General Clit, Dick Clit, Rainbow Dragon. Look at that beautiful colors there. We're gonna go check that out a bit, because I love rainbow colors. And then we're gonna circumvent and go back. So that's Metro Monk, M-O-N-K, okay, yeah. It didn't come to me at the moment. Of course, it's Metro Monk. So, of course, in October 17, that was my conclusion. And, of course, that was the conclusion by which, of course, I had assessed that humanity is set again towards an international conflagration. So that is what has been happening in accord to my prediction, in a general manner. So one of my main points, hey, this is really nice. One of my main points is, of course, that humanity, really nice, good job. Love it. One of my main points was that due to these unresolved, it was academic, intellectual, cosmopolitan, more sophisticated. But one of the main points was that due to the unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, these conflicts are gonna re-begin, restarts. Beautiful flowers here, look at that. Just the field. So that was my prediction. And consequently, it has happened how I predicted it. Of course, not all details. But generally, I have predicted it. Generally. And that's basically how it's been happening now. Ever since 2019, October 17th. Ever since October 17th, 2019. If you look, of course, at Russia, Ukraine. If you look, of course, at Russia, Ukraine, that is a conflict which dates from the 20th century. That is a conflict which, of course, dates from the 20th century. So being that that conflict dates from the 20th century, it is an unresolved conflict, just like I predicted that due to these unresolved conflicts, most of these conflicts which you see now, Hamas is an organization which was founded in the 80s. They didn't take power in Gaza until 2007, 2 decades later, 20 years later after their foundation in what was called the Gaza Civil War. Then they took power, political and military power of Gaza. And of course, that's an unresolved conflict with Israel, which dates from the 20th century. Russia, Ukraine dates from the Cold War. Russia-Ukraine dates from the Cold War. Russia-Ukraine dates from the Cold War. And of course, that is something which we have to, of course, realize in all the civilizational complex where we are now, of all the interactive aspects of our life, of our domain, of our polarity, of our situation now, that the relations as we had them before have come to an end. What I did not predict, although I predicted this international conflagration, aka World War III in a general manner, what I did not predict, however, it is the deterioration of relations with the United States. So I did not predict the re-election of Donald Trump, which is a phenomenon in U.S. politics and world politics, but United States is the superpower, who's now rivaled by the superpower of China. East and the West again, paradoxically, the China's People's Republic of China, mainland China, still references in their official philosophy, ideology, and statements and governance. They still mention Karl Marx, Marxism, Leninism, Karl Marx. In China, Karl Marx is not of Chinese, of course, ethnic Chinese, but is mentioned. Karl Marx, it's China is socialism with Chinese characteristics. It's socialism with Chinese characteristics. Such a paradox if you think about it. That China was able to maintain their one-party state, and even after Tiananmen Square event in 1989, just when the most of the Soviet Eastern European communist socialist countries, based on mostly Karl Marx's interpretation and implementation of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital and his Marxist socialist communist ideas, philosophies, theories, and ideology, right? Because East Germany was socialist communists. East Berlin, the only 9th of November 1989, they were reunited. The fall of the Berlin Wall was kind of symbolizing the fall of Eastern countries, Warsaw Pact, socialist communist blocs, except for Yugoslavia, which kind of drifted into the 90s, a few more years until the complete breakdown and civil war in Yugoslavia, right? Because some ethnic conflict, sectarian, ethnic, religious conflict in Yugoslavia. But Yugoslavia was also a country for mostly by Tito, who ruled a few decades. And in the Eastern Bloc, besides in Poland and Hungary and Bulgaria, Romania and other countries there who dissoluted, and then later on in the 90s separated from the Soviet Union, the bloody one was Romania. Romania had a few thousand deaths, and it's still not resolved. Their own conflict there, paradoxically, their conflict, some even today, a vast majority even don't call it a revolution, they call it a coup d'etat. They say no, it wasn't a revolution, it was a coup d'etat because Ceausescu had paid off the debt finally in February 1989. The national debt, CIA fact book of 1990, January, February, March 1990 and 1990, at the beginning of the year, the CIA factor book puts the Romanian foreign debt at zero. It was the only country, one of the only countries, who had no debt. They had implemented in 1984 a strong austerity, and they were able to pay it off, Ceausescu, in like 4 years. In 1989, by when the time Ceausescu was executed in December 25th with his wife on Christmas Day, interestingly enough, on Christmas Day, 25th of December, they were shot in a show trial. So some say, no, it wasn't a revolution, it was a coup d'etat. They were taken out. And it was the only bloody one, a few thousands of deaths. And still to this day, they're unresolved. Who ordered the shoot? Who ordered the military to shoot, to open fire? So it's not clear up to today who had ordered. Who had ordered? So who had ordered, of course, to shoot? Who had ordered 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 to shoot? It's still a question that they ask themselves, and that is apparent if you study geopolitics. So whatever that case is, but it's important in the evolution of NATO, right? Because the countries from NATO now include Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary. They're formerly Eastern Bloc, Eastern countries aligned with the USSR or the Warsaw Pact. So that, of course, has to be understood fully and then complemented. Where we have, of course, to be fully understood where the domain where we are, of course, to get doing on all the appellations and the verbs. And the verb that is geopolitics, meaning that it's geopoliticking, geopolitics with geopolitic, you geopolitic with geopolitic, at the individual nation state level, at the individual sovereign citizen ASPI level, and then we take it to the macro level because it involves all these levels, right? So it's 20th century politics, geopolitics and historical realities spilling over to create conflict in the 21st century, sometimes decades later. Isn't it paradoxical? Decades later, isn't just because there's an irony, there's a certain karma to it, I guess, if you say that's kind of outright strange and bizarre at the macro level. If you look, you can see certain patterns, I guess, and certain on and off, and then conflicts and resolutions, and then conflicts re-emerging. But of course you have to aim towards reconciliation and put sometimes the past behind us, just like myself. It doesn't matter who I was before 2014 February, and it doesn't matter even who I was before COVID. It's what matters who I put on the table today. And the most that I put on the table today, see, here is 5 cents more than the other place. Was 161. 166.9 minus 161 is 5 cents difference. 5 cents difference, if you calculate, see, it's 166, but the other place was 161, so that means that's a 5 cents. 5 cents for 100 liters, that's still $5. So if you calculate at the macro level, you're gonna come to the conclusion that it's best, I guess, if you buy from the other place. But it's Best price of gas, average price of gas in February 2020, just before I had COVID, was 93 cents. So it's a big percentage if you calculate it. Now, of course, my brain estimates the calculations of the consumption and how the burden of the price of gas has increased so much for the citizen consumer, and the majority of it because our system, how they're built, depends so much on gas and on traveling by car, that not just the interest paid on the debt, that it has, of course, taken out from the life, financial life, being and wellness of the citizen, because the salaries have stagnated. So since the salaries have stagnated, the price of gas has not, and the cost of living has increasing, and thus people are spending more on gas. People are buying less because they have to spend more on gas. Generally, overall, I'm not referring to the few millionaires and billionaires in the North American Collective in Canada, United States, because that's a different affectation thereof. There's a different affectation. So using this discernment. So back to geopolitics, but it is a point of geopolitics because OPEC still dominates the oil market. And now what's happening with Qatar is another matter. Israel just struck last week targets via its planes. Have a strong air force, one of the top in the world air force. And of course, they struck in Qatar. But the question is, where did they actually pass by whose airspace? That is something which I kind of have a question about, right? The airspace which they had to pass is something which I'm curious myself about, the airspace which had to be crossed in many ways to cross it, right? To cross the airspace. That is a formulation of airspace law, and how breach and violation of a person's airspace by military vehicles is or not, or potentially is considered an act of war. These are all, of course, these are all a bit abstract as well, right? These notions of airspace, and I guess you go by the border up, where the border is, and then you go up from those points. So basically when you cross parallel exactitude with the altitude and the altitude in it. So that is basically how we formulate ourselves. So here somebody's coming with the bike, and I'm going on the side here, because that's always fun. My fellow citizen there on the bike with the light, that's always fun. I got out of the way. I took 4 steps to the right just so that I get out of the way, take 4 steps to the right if I see somebody coming on the bike, because I stay on the path here to be in security with my fellow citizens. So that is the aspect which we have to delineate ourselves with. So back to 2019, when I predicted an international conflagration, super important to remember, that was based, of course, on these unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, which were many. But here, for example, in North America, what I call the Great North American Civilizational Complex, which is an emergent civilization, which is distinct, not divorced, the double D's. This is me as a philosopher, as an independent philosopher, strategist, thinker, theorist, and geopolitical, theoretical, honest theorist. We are a North American civilizational collective. We constitute a complex civilizational collective, which is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization, right? So we have our distinctions, right? We have our distinctions. So due, of course, to the fact that we have our distinctions, but we're not divorced from Western civilizations, one of these distinctive compromise which we made to have continuing relative harmony and societal peace is here, because we're in Quebec, the compromise of the great French language, which is the preservation of the French language and whatever constituents of the beauty of the French language and its culture, arts and crafts, and all the Quebec, all that constitutes Quebec as the coming French state. L'État français, the French state, with the French language. But we're not French from France, but we're Quebecers. We are not necessarily by ethnicity. Just like we're not necessarily by ethnicity, by race, by volition, by past nationalities, Canadians or Quebecers, Canadians or North Americans or Americans, but we are by having become, right? Becoming Americans, becoming Canadians, becoming Quebecers. Not necessarily because our ancestors were from Germany or Hungary or Poland or Africa or other countries, right? Or Spain or the Middle East, Libya, Egypt, you know, India and China, but because we have become, right? And we're still becoming. We're an emergent civilization here, in which we are distinct, not divorced from Western civilization. And here we made the great linguistic compromise, right? And of course, all who come to join us here, we continue to the best of our abilities. We have to make an individual effort, right? For the French language, if we don't make an individual effort for the French language and in reciprocity for the French language vis-a-vis the other language, which is English, right? Although I learned some Spanish in the past 10 years and I lived there, and I just got to practice it more because I know how when I hear some German, I also know some German, Hungarian, and Romanian. So that's a nice red there. See, red, my favorite color. Maybe get that Draconis. So of course now back to geopolitics. It is of course the fundamental where we are in the aspects. That's red, maybe that's a dragon army, potential home, pledge your allegiance, nobody's born a dragon, and love that red. R-E-D, my favorite color. What I said. That's a good red with that. So we constitute a geopolitical complex. We constitute a civilizational complex, which is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. So that distinction from Western civilization makes us who we are today. But it's not just distinction. It's not just a distinction. It's not just a distinction. It is not just a distinction. It is a whole parallel complex of which we are. So back to 2019 when I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. Now the situation at hand is, as I am on this island metropolis, Hawk Island metropolis, and meditate on all these lights that you see and that I see and that the camera captivates, and including in my camera, my work tool, the smartphone, that this electricity comes from hydroelectric water. And you see these pillars, there's thousands and tens of thousands built in the 20th century with brains and steel and brains and knowledge for the electrifications of our massive collective, North American collective. Canada, United States, and my fellow brothers and sisters Canadians, the king is absent. And the King Charles came for the throne speech, and it gives me goosebumps, and she was like, no, don't do that. My uncle, Prime Minister Carney, the king is absent, pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. That should have been gone in the 20th century, right? January 1st, 2000, at the end of 1999 in December, and the end of December, the king is absent. The Prime Minister pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. That's why I'm upset a bit about that. We should have become a republic long ago. The king is absent. It's time for the republic. In the 20th century, should have ended. 1999, December 31st, 1999, it should have ended. December 31st, 1999, it should have ended. Right? December 99, it should have ended. Right? And these pillars, thank you workers, thousands across Quebec, San Francisco, California, all the 50 states and the 10 provinces and 3 territories, which we're going to turn into states. And we're a republic of Canada because the king is absent. And we're going to fuse in the public-private partnership, democratic republican manner with mass public-private partnership. But take a look at these beauties. Majestic. Thousands, tens of thousands across the collective. This is the privilege of civilization right here. And these are vulnerable. Tens of thousands of these. And now I just read a report that supposedly about 12,000 cameras, webcams across the infrastructure produced in China, we have vulnerabilities for espionage. So that's why my theory is best for total SSD, security, service, and defense. To fuse the RCMP and the FBI and fuse Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex, the North and the South. But thank you to the workers of the 20th century who built tens of thousands of these electric lines for us to have electricity, the smartphones, to watch the Roku, the Netflix, to watch the computers. All this is a privilege. That's why it takes a massive public-private partnership. So all these domains in the appellations, of course, where we have, of course, the institutions that today are present. I believe my reforms for as a mass public-private partnership, a democratic republican, pro-labor, universal, revolutionary centrism best. So considering that I also predicted what's happening now, I have some solutions. We have to work on some existing institutions and protocols and establish a little bit of that old rock and roll school, because some old school is okay, some old school is good. With a new school, the synthesis, the fusion thereof of some and some. Some we just have to let go because it doesn't serve us. And you know the motto is Draconis, Legionis, Imperium, Servitium. The legions of the Dragon Empire, the Dragon Legions, the SSD Legions of the coming 63 are for security, service, and defense only, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, integrated with all existing organizations. That's the philosophy. We got work to do. Our infrastructure, our bridges. It takes a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of knowledge, and then applying my theories, implementing my theories as a mass public-private partnership, as a mass public-private partnership, as a mass public-private partnership, right? As a mass public-private partnership. Look at these. Mass public-private partnership. So, having predicted what's happening now in a general manner in 2019, October, I do have some of the solutions. Not all of the solutions, but some. And I turn left and right, and across the street. Turn again. You never know. The brakes malfunction, so of course the electricity can malfunction, so can the brakes. So that's why you always have to, of course, secure yourself by doing a little bit of turning of the head, you know, just like a hawk, left and right. So that is the sphere where we must integrate our plateaus now. So now I'm going to discuss the DMAA. And again, before I do, I want to say that, yes, I predicted an international conflagration, but I did not predict that our relations with the United States would deteriorate to this point. This point, it gives me goosebumps every time I discuss it. Because my brothers and sisters, this following statement is a geopolitical statement in foreign affairs for both Canada and the United States reciprocally. This is just like the pie symbol, not the apple pie, cherry pie, blueberry pie, bacon pie. Not that pie. The mathematical pi symbol, which has a letter N with two heads, two faces. They look different. One looks like a head of a hawk. The other one kind of looks like a sort of a dog, sort of a hyena, sort of a aardvark, sort of a donkey maybe. Unidentified animal head, earthly, but the other one's more celestial, hawk. So it has that two heads, that N. N for norm, the letter N for neutral, neurodivergent, neurotypical, natural, Normandy, Nebraska, etc. The letter N has two heads. It represents, that's why our coming Imperial Republic of the 63 will have two faces, two heads. Just like one head one faithful for goodness, kindness, benevolence, righteousness, the other one for to punish and to correct. Coming empire will have two heads from the mountain, and dual will need to militarize and integrate citizen integration theory and constitute the total security, service and defense North American complex, aka the Democratic Imperial Republic of the 63. So now that end is always the relation. It's a constant. It's a constant. 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 So that constant constant that constant is the 3.1416, the number representing the ratio between the circumference and the circle. The circumference and the circle. The circumference and the circle is always 13. It's always correction. 3.1416 is the ratio between the diameter and the circumference of a circle. It only relates to the circle. However, the circle, not the square, not the triangle, not the trapeze, not the pentagon. The circle is 3.1416. That's a constant. It's not a variable. So for us, the constant is, and has been for at least since the dissolution of the British Empire for the past 75 years, that of course we have to work to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, diplomatic, security relations with the United States. And the United States, you, my brothers and sisters of the 50, also it is so vis-a-vis us. So it's mutual, reciprocal. Although you have a border with Mexico, as a foreign affairs top #1 priority for both Canada vis-a-vis the United States and the United States vis-a-vis Canada is to work to establish to have the best friendly social, political, cultural, sports, fitness, financial, commercial, business, economic, diplomatic, military, security relations with each other. With Canada, you with us, and us with you. And that has been breached because now, let's be honest, fellow Canadians, 75% of our exports go to the US market, to the 50 states, to the United States, buys 75% of everything that we export, even more, sometimes 80%. There's no way Europe, at the moment in time, they're dealing with their own difficulties, that they are able to absorb more than 5-10 in the coming years of that. So it's still going to leave us with 50, 55, 60%. Maximum 15 of what 15% what we export to the United States we will be able to replace. We're not going to be able to do more. We're not going to be able to do more. Right? Not going to be able to do more. More than that. Maximum. Horse. We're not going to be able to do more than that. We're not going to be able to do more. Export. Maybe we're going to be able to do 10, 5%, 10, 15 max like in the coming years, but let's be honest, it's 75%. The German, the economic engine of the European Union also is dealing hard, is not that great anymore. I mean, they're having their own problems and difficulties. It is still good and great, but they're having problems, and they're having problems with COVID and since the Russia-Ukraine invasion, but There's also the taboo which has been broken, that Germany's rearmament is a taboo which has been broken. We have to state as any historian, politician, geopolitical theoretical analyst, and theorist, and parallel also the Japanese, both in the West and in the East. You know, in Europe and in Asia, the taboo of Japan has been broken down. The taboo of their rearmament, both are rearming, and both have the imperialistic, militaristic, nationalistic, chauvinistic history, right? Both Germany and Japan became militaristic, aggressive, nationalistic, racial empires, you know, based on certain racial superiority doctrine. So, not gonna. That's a discussion which requires hours and hours just to dedicate on that breaking of that taboo. Recently, just post Russia invading Ukraine, or their special military operation, which they call it, and you know, as for Uncle Connie's quadrupling the. That's 4 times, eh? Quadrupling means times 4. Quadrupling the defense budget. You're a bit disconnected from reality, Mr. Connie. And it's not all about the money. It's the Romans used to say morales. M-O-R-A-L-E. Morale, 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 morale. I'm not going to go into that debate now. It's not a debate. It's just the way things are, you know. So, our main interest is to work, and all on the left, on the right, in the center, center left, center right. I'm not discussing far right or far left, far right or far left, far right or far left here. I'm not discussing far left or far right. That's different. A matter altogether. But generally, we have to work to establish the best economic, social, financial, cordial relations with each other. That's just how we have to do it, to work it. So now the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance in Action, it is super important that you pay attention to this DMAA very closely. Super important to integrate it and implementation of this theory, which is not just a theory, it's a philosophy, it's a frame of reference for future action or inaction thereof for NATO. It's made strictly for NATO. It's called the DMAA. In parentheses, it has a C for consequence. So again, because I gotta thank my anonymous friend for the dialogue which we had, that dialogue was a great dialogue, which was productive from my perspective, that for me to understand that I have to explain it properly so that it doesn't seem that it doesn't lack compassion. Although compassion in this sense of a theoretical framework is something which has to be evaluated in it, in the aspects of the consequences. So, because it's not about helping others humanitarian. It's not about providing food. It's not about providing sanitation. It's not about providing shelter. It's not about providing humanitarian aid, right? Or sanitation or healthcare or sanitation pads or tampons or baby powder or diapers. It's military only. DMAA, direct military action or assistance. And those AAs can be interchanged. So assistance or action. So direct military action or assistance is strictly for military purposes. It has to do strictly with military affairs. For example, direct military assistance or action and its consequences, in parentheses, there's a C. So it's when NATO provides military assistance to a country which is in a conflict with a non-NATO countries. So basically non-NATO countries fighting. Non-NATO member countries fighting, you know, non-NATO member countries fighting. For example, Ukraine was not part of NATO. As a matter of fact, the Article 5, because NATO is a military defense alliance from 1949. Hey, look at this beauty. Quite cute. Hey, it's all, wow. I wonder what it is. It's quite cute. Kind of looks a bit, I don't know. I have no idea what it is. This doesn't come to me, but it kind of looks cute. We'll need some color. So it has to do with military action or assistance. Action has to be when NATO directly is involved in bombardment or with boots on the ground. Again, DMAA is related to NATO's involvement by action or assistance in a non-NATO conflict. Because Article 5 of NATO, which states that's when one NATO member country is attacked, other other NATO member countries, because it's a security, collective security defense alliance. It's a collective security organization, right? Military defense, formed in 1949, celebrated 75th year. And in its 75th years, Article 5 for collective defense, Article 5 of NATO stipulates, and was invoked only once. Once and only. It has never been invoked after. It was September 11, 2001. That was the only time that NATO has ever invoked Article 5, September 11th. And in my past videos relating to the NATO as a philosopher, you see that I am discussing, calling for both Israel and Mexico to become the 32nd and 33rd simultaneously member countries of NATO, because of what the work that I did in relation to the transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. So that was before October 7th. That was before October 7th. Now we have to, I guess, see what this is heading. October 7th was, they characterized it as their own 9/11, and Netanyahu's and the IDF's war against Hamas, and by the fact of the devastation of Gaza by its air force, and hard to fight under those tunnels which they built since 2007. They had built these tunnels underground, hundreds of kilometers. How did they build hundreds of kilometers of tunnels in web? So they destroyed about, maybe they say a quarter maybe. So imagine, not even maybe a quarter. In percentage, I didn't see the percentages, how much supposedly they destroyed of the tunnels, but supposedly there's hundreds of miles, all in, from what I saw, 4 different spots, like 4 big webs in Gaza, in all the 5 in each one. Is like hundreds of kilometers, not just in Gaza City, but across the Gaza Strip. There were hundreds of kilometers. Like some estimation puts it about 440 kilometers, even miles of underground tunnel systems where they have rooms and munitions and other things. And I guess a lot of it we don't know, because only a lot of it was destroyed and secretive. But to build all those hundreds of tunnels since 2007, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. Point is that I have been for the past years during COVID, and since we see that China in the past 5 years has increased like never before their nuclear arsenal. They're almost doubled their nuclear arsenal. China almost doubled in just 4 years. And so much they had built more than in 4 years. They had built more in 4 years than they had built in the past 40 years. You wonder how come, since their mass building of nuclear weapons in the past 4 years during COVID, China. So that's why I've been advocating to build, because we don't have the global defense, North American defense. The Golden Dome, which needs to put a HAWK in to have Canada involved in that. Golden Hawk, to intercept ICBM rockets. And of course, I've been calling for us to build 44 mass underground subterranean tunnel systems in case of a thermonuclear war across Canada. Inspired by the Montreal Underground Village. Paradoxically, I'm no fan, no supporter of Hamas, but by the tunnels that are built together. So of course, to build those 44 mass tunnels underground, and in order for us to survive a nuclear war. So that is what I've been calling to build for a while now. Speaking of 44, you can see the number on the bus. That's 44. You can see the number on the bus. But that wasn't the number of the bus. That is just the classification of it. So that has been my call. That has been my call for years now. So back to, of course, the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance in Action. The Direct Military Assistance in Action stipulates that we have, of course, to congruently pay attention and implement it, because it is for us. And one of the consequences of us taking, as NATO member countries, taking action in the past, whether in the 20th century or now in the 21st century, or even now more modern with Ukraine, and Israel is not part of NATO. Ukraine was not part of NATO. Taiwan is not. Neither is Pakistan, Bangladesh, and their conflict in Kashmir with India, right? So as it relates to NATO's involvement, whether by assistance or action in a non-NATO member country. And this has a potential consequence. And that consequence, of course, is, of course, all the consequential prudence where we are, of course, now to be involved in all the diplomatic relations. It has nothing to do with diplomacy. It has all to do with action or assistance, right? So the AA, or it can be inversed. It can be both. It can be both action and assistance. So, for example, we don't have boots on the ground in Ukraine, but of course we provided military assistance by providing Canada provided military assistance by helmets, by munition, by helmets, by munition, by weaponry, by drones, and by armored vehicles. Right? So that's assistance, military assistance, DMAA, direct military assistance or action, which has a consequence. And potentially one of those consequences is maybe those foreign actors and foreign states which can be powerful, like China or Russia or India or even Brazil, that the secret police and the governments finance internal discord, finance transnational criminal syndicate or organized groups. Even could be the assassination of an important figure. And you know what I mean? Look at that. This is dangerous for bikes for children even. We gotta fix that. Public workers, we got work to do. That's why my DRT theory best. So that's why we gotta focus on the work which we have to do internally and then collectively for our survival. For our children here, children of the empire, you know. So the DMAA is a working tool, is a point of reference for us to build from it. And just like the motto of NATO is, in consuelo in animus liber, consuelo in animus liber, consuelo in animus liber. Beh, consuelo in animus liber. Consuelo in animus liber. Consuelo in animus liber. A mind unfettered in deliberation is the Latin motto of NATO. Thus, this DMAA theory, philosophy, working tool has to be unfettered in its deliberation for us to take future course of action or not take a course of action. Right? This is Geopolitics University of a Dragon here. Philosophical stance, you know? Philosophical stance. So that is, of course, the philosophical stance, which we, of course, have to intermittently be about in all the pluralities of where we are involved now. And that is just something which we have, of course, to evaluate from now on, from this point in time. That evaluation has to be with a mind unfettered in deliberation. Right? Because it has consequences. And this consequence is potentially the transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, which the RCMP has warned about since 2015. We've been warned about. Since 2015, RCMP sounded the alarm. Said there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. We're lacking resources, we're lacking funds. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And since August 1st of this year, and they have warned us also, a lot of the warnings came also since during COVID, they had warned there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And now since August 1st, we're designated Canada, it gives me goosebumps, by the United States, we're designated Canada as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people since it's been 46 days now because of fentanyl supposedly crossed 3 times more in 2025 by the end of the fiscal year, which has not yet gone, compared to last year, which could have, they said there on black and white on the White House, that could have potentially killed 16 million Americans. 16 million Americans. And the other motive why we're designated since this year of August 1st an unusual and extraordinary threat is because due to the fact that many super labs exist in Canada more than before, which can potentially kill millions of Americans, and because of our lack of coordination with U.S. law enforcement. It says there in the official White House by the Trump administration and Trump's official signature since August 1st, you can check it, the reason, the motive that the United States administration, Trump's administration, has increased tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel was because of that motive. Just several motives. And just last year, 25th of October, 2024, it hasn't been a year yet. What happens in Surrey, BC? The RCMP dismantled one of the biggest ever drug super labs in Canadian history. Not one of the biggest super lab. You know the amount of doses of fentanyl it could have killed twice the population of Canada, just that one super lab. So we have that reality. Maybe that transnational criminal syndicate organized group was financed by ABCD country, where NATO took in the past, or recent past, 20th century or 21st century, or more recently, the MAA, where NATO got involved by military assistance. And thus that country, by Secret Service XYZ, financed this transnational criminal organized groups and tempers fentanyl, because more and more I declare fentanyl a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense. People are dying. People are not buying. People are not, you know what I mean? If they're dying in overdoses, a drug dealer, drug kingpin would make it for money to buy his 44 mansions and 4 airplanes and 11 cars, you know, whatever the case may be. If they're dying, that means that somewhere there's like a bioweapon, is a temperance with it. So that's my evaluation. More and more I'm declaring, more and more I'm saying that fentanyl is actually a biological weapon, a bioweapon engineering. So the message is today, hug like you never hugged before. And you know, my brothers and sisters, as I sing that rock and roll for the RCMP, for the security, for the armed forces, I also sing that rock and roll for the brothers and sisters when you take your second chances and you do your criminal rehabilitation. For the firefighters, the truckers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the construction workers, crane operators, train conductors, all of course involved in the distribution and production of food. That of course I always get it on the go with that. So that is something where of course we have to get doing on that spiel. Get out of the way, please. Just be careful of others, you know, stay on the right. So of course that is just something which we have of course to implement. So that implementation is something which of course you have to adhere to. Yeah, we have to implement this DMAA as a working protocol for NATO, for the highest level, at all levels. The DMAA has to be, I just simplified it. I just give a brief aperçu, a brief dictum of my philosophy, my theory, my theoretical framework, which is a working tool. We have to, from now on, the DMAA, where we take action or assistance in non-NATO related conflicts, as our empire will rise. Transnational, NATO, NORAD, NATO 63, and the 32, because Sweden joined, so we got 32. So, yeah, the RCMP dismantled last year, the biggest ever super lab. What if they had 5? See number 44 again. And they were the number 5 on it. See Providence. So what if they had 5, and the RCMP dismantled 1? That means there's 4 more. Maybe there's 1 in Quebec, 1 in Nova Scotia. There's 1 maybe in Ontario, and there's 1 maybe in Alberta, because the other one was in BC, or Saskatchewan, or Manitoba. Across Canada, coast to coast. Maybe they only dismantled 1, and those other ones can potentially kill all the population of Canada. So it's a crisis, it's an emergency. We have to mobilize, we have to implement my DRT, brothers and sisters, Democratic Republic. And you know, I'm not perfect, far from it, and I don't make any pretenses to be perfect, to have none of that. I've been craving a massage therapy session, of course, for years, and you know, that's just what it is with that. And I live a very healthy, active lifestyle, and I encourage all to work out, and we're gonna mass finance working out, training, exercising, and that's what we're gonna do together. Thank you, bus drivers. Gonna salute the bus drivers, and we're gonna drill it home. I'm gonna go back home, and I'm getting a bit on the hungry side. So now we're gonna discuss the DRT, debt refusion theory. The DRT, debt refusion theory, for the creation of the universal exchange. For the creation of the universal exchange in it. We have to implement it Canada, United States, because our financial situation for most of the citizens is very dire. We have reached a very troublesome place. We have 4 pressing economic matters which press the majority of the population of both Canada and United States. In whatever order, these 4, and because of these 4, we have to implement my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, which of course incorporates in it monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which of course was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. Back in the 90s, France, Belgium, Germany, whatever the case, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, they implemented the monetary integration theory in the 90s. They destroyed their national central banks, they destroyed their national currencies, and they created the euro. But they also created the ECB, the European Central Bank, which issues the euro, which is basically a multinational central bank. Multinational. They no longer have central banks like we have Bank of Canada, Federal Reserve, Banco de Mexico, Bank of Israel. They no longer have these banks, central banks. They have a common central bank, the ECB, the European Central Bank. So my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, integrates my MIT military DRT, the debt refusion theory, incorporates in my theory is integrated the MIT, the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. See, here's 161, there was 166. But you have the most expensive one as well. You have the diesel one. So you have 2 kinds here, but the other place you had 166. So you have the choice. So I'm gonna now explain it, and the 4 problems which we have to implement it Canada, United States at the same time, simultaneously, because it's part of my bipolar strategy for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the North American collective by the fusion of the Canada, United States into the complex of the North American collective in order to fundamentally create a complementary covenant and cooperative institutions. So the 4 economic problems which most of the citizens now face are growing cost of living, the prices of the chocolate bars, the bacon, the bread, the cheese is going up, the meat is going up, eggs is going up, cost of living, it's still increasing. Price of coffee, even the other day, I saw $32 for a coffee, which used to be $17.99 for 925 grams. That's almost double. It's not exactly double by a few dollars, but almost. But it's like 75% increase in just 3.5 years. In just 2 years, actually. Because about 2 years ago, it was $17.99. I couldn't believe it at the same place. Anyway, so cost of living, coffee, the rents are increasing. Even my rent increased by a certain amount. But I can't complain, because in my case, I'm going to say that it was between 6 and 10. So I'm not going to say exactly by how much, but it was between $6 and $10. So I'm not going to divulge by how much it was. Between $6 and $10. Right? So it's within the framework that, of course, we have some regulations, municipal regulations in Montreal, rent control, so I'm not going to complain, because the percentage of my increase, even if somewhere between 6 and 10, I'm not going to say exactly disclose the amount I will not, but I will say that it is okay for me. I can't complain. So the growing cost of living, the growing cost of lands, the stagnation of the salaries. Salaries have mostly stagnated. We have more and more strikes. The other problem is with the stagnation of the salaries. What it is? It is the growing credit card debt. People are maxing out credit cards, buying, buy. You buy and you integrate, and the stagnation of the salaries. But those 4 main problems for both Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the U.S. That's why we need to set up the binational salvation front. So that's what we have to do, set up the binational salvation front together. So that is, of course, the domain which we have, of course, to integrate and to do, of course, in the plateau where we are now, in the reservation, of course, of doing or not doing. So we're going to have to implement my DRTT, debt refusion theory, which integrates MIT, Canada, United States simultaneously, because of those 4 problems, which have gotten worse, and even every day it's getting worse. Prices are increasing, more and more homeless, food banks, So I paid my rent for September. I Never missed in the past 10 years that I've been living there. Never missed paying rent. Never missed paying rent. I never missed paying rent, you know, that is just something I never missed paying rent, and that's just how it is with that, and that's just how we gotta do it with that. So I never missed paying rent, and that's just how it is. So of course that is something which we have of course to do in the consequential of course appellations now, that I never missed paying rent. So we're gonna have to take all the public and the private debt, all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast Canada. We're gonna convert all the public private debt, we're gonna add it, ADD, add all the public private debt of Canada together, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're gonna add it together, and then we're gonna convert it into US dollars, and we're gonna add all the public private debt of the US, add it all together, and add it all together with the Canadian public private debt and all the money in circulation. And that money is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, which we're going to issue the UE, a new currency which is going to have the value of the US dollar. For a way, it could be the dollar, the imperial dollar, if not the UE. That's just, that's what it is, money. Whether the shekel, the euro, the yen, the yuan, you know, the Canadian dollar, US dollar, Australian dollar, they're all units of exchange. So we're going to create the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE, the U, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. The UE is going to have the value of the US dollar. The unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. We could call it the imperial dollar, the dollar of the empire, but it's a UE. It's a universal exchange unit. We can of course blah 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 extend it to Mexico, NATO, to all the countries of NATO, create a common NATO member currency, this UE, which is going to have the value of the US dollar. And then if we have a resolution with Israel, they make peace arrangements and they finalize the war, you know, and Mexico and Israel can join NATO, right? As it was prior to October 7th, I was advocating for that to happen prior to October 7th. And whenever some people mention surprise attack, just like 9/11, when it was the only time NATO invoked, as I said before October 7th, I was proposing for Genesis chapter 30, Genesis 33 NATO protocol, Genesis 33 NATO protocol, when Jacob, who became Israel, and Esau hugged and embraced. There's a biblical passage there. I'm not going to go into biblical mysteries and whatever, but today is more important than DRT for today. For today. What's today? The DRT, today, September 16, 2025, but in my parallel self where I build supercomputers, satellites, microchips, and robotics, my parallel self, it's 14th of November, 2029. It is the year of darkness in that parallel life. 14th of November 2029, it is the year of darkness, 14th of November 2029. So that being stated and said, now we have of course the DRT for us to be saved from this potential financial Armageddon. And it takes BlackRock and Blackstone, are two financial institutions which split after 1989, but they still work together on some collaborations. And we have to take all my brother citizens, Scorpio, Bill Gates, and all the high tech, and all the tech giants, and all the public-private institutions, such as Microsoft, such as PayPal, such as of course BlackRock and Vanguard and the Bank of Canada and my bank. I only have a bank, RBC, and I don't have credit cards myself. I am $10,000 in debt because I have a credit line. I have a line of credit with the RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. So all the public-private debt, we're going to create this new currency. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. It's not going to be able to be more than 10% after that. With this money, we're going to mass finance, of course, the rebuilding of our infrastructure, get rid of the border, do a great census. We're going to do a great North American census, see who's been living here since, I guess, 2014. Let's say March 2014. and do an assessment in order for them to serve in the Dragon Army. Of course, if you have 44 criminal convictions, I guess we're going to implement Operation Dracula on you, but that's another rock and roll song with that, but that's what we're going to get down that drill. So yours truly is going to be getting rid of the border, fusing the RCMP and FBI, mass finance tourism, for this empire, upcoming empire, the 63. We're going to sign the new constitution to amalgamate and fuse Canada, United States, the Imperial Democratic Republic, where we're going to finance healthcare, rehabilitation. We're going to mass finance, of course, tourism. Every season, we're going to have 4 seasons, every 3 months. Every citizen who's 16 is going to be accorded 4 days. So every 3 months, 4 times a year, at the beginning of the solstice and equinox of every season, is going to be accorded 4 days to travel, 4 nights to have lodging in hotels, motels, and food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, credited from the empire. But you lose a night if you travel from midnight to midnight or 1. After midnight, you lose a night. So if you're in the air at night, you lose it after midnight. You know, if you're on the bus or in the train, you lose the night. So they have 3 nights. But you can accumulate, and you can take every month 4 days, every 3 months, or you can take every 6 months 8 days, because it's 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 16. So at the end of the year, if you don't use your 4 days, you have 16 days. So you can take your 16 days a year. That's going to be for rehabilitation, rejuvenation of our imperial complex, for the rejuvenation of the new civilizational complex here, of the new dominion of the Imperial America, which we're going to fuse together with the true north, strong and free, on the land of the brave and the home of the brave. Got to add some loving, righteousness, and justice. And it's a mass public-private partnership. We're going to do this, and the empire is going to credit every 3 months, every season, on the equinox and solstice, on the springtime, summertime, autumn time, and of course autumn time and winter time. We're going to credit 4 days for all the citizens of our empire, all the citizens. And citizenship is going to be granted to all Canadian who are Canadian citizens, who are citizens of the US, and an amnesty with specific cases. We're going to work some protocols for amnesty. If you've been living in Canada, United States since March 2014 or 2015 or 2017, 7-10, I would say since February 2020, COVID, 5 years even, 7 years, 10, 11 years, let's say 11 years from since March. What was that, March 3rd? On that 2014, on that on the boiler we saw there. So something like that, we're gonna credit some automatic citizenship. But provided that you're not a criminal who has 44 criminal convictions in the past 11 years. If you have 44 criminal convictions, well, we're gonna not give you citizenship or imperial blessings, but we're gonna give you the Imperial Dracula love protocol. A different type of love, I guess. So this is the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, and the DRT, the debt refusion theory. We have to be implementing it. We have to be implementing the debt refusion theory. The DRT, we have to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. In all the instances where we are now, we have to implement this debt refusion theory. There's no way out of this. You cannot argue. You cannot say no. You cannot say the valuation. You cannot oppose it. You cannot oppose it in whatever shape or form you deem to oppose it. Because it's the solution, and because things are getting worse. So paradoxically, because of my suffering, struggling as an ASPI, this neurodivergence, on the table along with those trillions of kisses, is the DRT, the debt refusion theory, which is the solution. Or if not the only solution, something which resembles it. My DRT theory is the solution. So let's do it. From December 3rd to December 25th, the 22 days, parallel with the 40 and the 40, across the North American Collective. Lose my eye. I thought I was gonna lose my eye. Pledge your allegiance, our family. The DRT for the UE. Via, of course, the new created, we're gonna issue phones, public-private partnership phones of the Empire, the Imperial Dragon phones and citizenship cards, and we're going to integrate with all the banking institutions, and we're going to accord those 4 days every spring every summer for the rehabilitation. We're going to have lots of joy with that, and that's how we're going to do that. So now, I thought I lost my again. Pledge allegiance to our family, support the dream, the Imperium Republic. Now we switch a little bit to that French because we're la belle province. Bienvenue Québécois et Québécoises. Je pensais que j'allais perdre mon œil gauche. J'ai de la poussière, je dois bénir un peu de la déesse pour chanter du rock'n'roll puis qu'il s'en sorte de la poudre que je t'ai jetée. Je pense que à cause de comment le vent circule, je bien commencé avec la gratitude. Je suis quand même content aujourd'hui. Joyeux. Hier, je n'étais pas à 100%, mais aujourd'hui, ça va bien mieux. Mais c'est sûr que ça fait longtemps que je suis en dépression suicidaire, mais je suis sorti de ma dépression et le suicide quand j'ai traversé le Canada de côte à côte. Fait que je célèbre 8 ans depuis que j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017. Cet événement, ça m'a complètement changé ma vie. C'est un événement, bien sûr, que j'aurais aimé continuer à chaque année, mais c'est sûr qu'au point de vue des finances, ça a été quelque chose de plus difficile à avoir. L'argent et les finances nécessaires pour avoir les finances dans ce point de compromis, pour avoir fait dans ce point où on vit maintenant, mais c'est sûr qu'avec la gratitude, la santé mentale, ça va en parallèle avec l'entraînement physique, que je vous encourage bien sûr de le faire. Et je me suis allé bien sûr voir pour m'acheter la télécommande pour le Roku, parce que c'est sûr que c'est quelque chose, un bien que mon ami anonyme m'a donné. Fait que c'est quelque chose que je dois remplacer parce que je pense que c'est moi-même à cause que comment j'ai touché quand j'ai mangé de la graisse 4 fois ou une couple de fois, puis je pense que ça s'est endommagé. Fait qu'avec le nouveau, je vais porter attention, mais c'est sûr que je vais prendre une petite responsabilité là-dessus. Puis tantôt, je suis allé voir les prix, bien, sont quand même différents. Ça arrange entre 34$ et 25$ puis 30$. Mais c'est sûr que je n'ai pas besoin de l'activation par la voix, par exemple. Mais avec la Roku, c'est sûr que c'est la télécommande que j'en ai besoin. Fait que j'ai payé mon loyer. On est le 16 septembre, mon loyer est payé. Ma facture d'électricité est payée. Puis jusqu'au 30 septembre, qu'il me reste pour que je paye mon téléphone. Fait que, du point de vue, mon seul stress en ce moment est financier, mais c'est sûr qu'à part ça, je travaille, je fais du travail indépendant, bien sûr, relié à la géopolitique. Le sport, c'est la danse. La danse, c'est le sport que je préfère. Danser, c'est quelque chose que j'adore faire. Puis là, vous voyez, bien sûr, le centre-ville du Mont-Royal, là, que vous voyez. C'est le centre-ville du Mont-Royal. Et bien sûr, là, ben, c'est loin, c'est quand même des kilomètres. C'est où qu'on était hier, là, que vous voyez que ça flash les lumières rouges, là. Pas celle-là, mais l'autre là-bas, en haut de la montagne. Pas celle-là, la grosse, mais celle-là, la petite. Celle-là que vous voyez maintenant, mais c'est là qu'on était hier dans la nuit dans ma maîtresse, sur le Mont-Royal, ma deuxième maison, où j'adore aller visiter ma maîtresse, qui me niaise des fois, mais vous savez que moi, j'ai une condition de neurodivergence, l'Asperger's, donc c'est sûr que ça a été tout un chemin, juste à faire, bien sûr. C'est quelque chose que j'ai juste accepté il y a 3 ans et demi, parce que ça faisait 9 ans, plus que 9 ans, comme l'avait dit, que je suis sur le spectre de l'autisme. Donc, ce spectre de l'autisme, c'est l'Asperger's. Donc, ce spectre, ça fait bien sûr que j'ai de la difficulté dans certaines choses. La compréhension sociale, ça peut être plus difficile. Des fois, je répète 2-3 fois la même chose. Ou l'école est là où on a tendance, les Asperger's, de briser l'espace personnel, de se rapprocher trop proche des gens ou de trop parler de nos intérêts spéciaux qui préoccupent vraiment tout notre quotidien. Là. Puis moi-même, c'est ma trinité d'intérêts spéciaux aussi connue comme obsessif. C'est la géopolitique, l'entraînement physique, la danse, la marche que je suis en train de faire en ce moment. Puis bien sûr, le rock'n'roll. Rock'n'roll, 24 sur 24. Puis dans la géopolitique, je suis moi-même un analyste, théoricien et stratège, philosophe de la géopolitique indépendante. J'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019. J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo en ligne. C'est sûr que c'est plus une version en anglais, par exemple, parce que je l'ai mis ça sur YouTube. Mais j'en parle parce que c'est important dans le contexte où mes philosophies, mes théories sont pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, pour la sécurité, service et défense dans le 21e siècle. C'est important et super important que je mentionne mon travail, bien sûr, dans lequel je prends beaucoup de fierté. Et même si j'ai cette condition de l'Asperger, j'ai ces forces-là. Et bien sûr, c'est pas tous les autistes qui sont forts dans les ordinateurs. À peu près 20% des autistes. 20%, c'est quand même 1 sur 5. 20%, c'est quand même 1 sur 5. Il y a bien des araignées ici. Vous voyez, c'est des araignées. Ils sont ici, puis je me demande, il y en a plein, des araignées. Vous voyez, ils sont partout ici. Ils ont leur maison, puis je me demande, la toile, tu sais, vis-à-vis comment que ça, la pollution, comment que ça se fait que ils restent là avec l'exhaust là, de l'automobile, tu sais, ils passent, mais ils sont là, tu sais. Puis là, les automobiles passent, puis ils sont là, les araignées. Vous voyez ça? Regardez ça. Ben, c'est intéressant, hein? Justement, je viens d'en compter 44. Puis il y en a plus que ça, mais quand même, ils sont partout, les araignées, vous voyez. C'est intéressant qu'ils ont bâti leur toile ici où il y a le pont, puis qu'ils survivent là, même s'il y a bien sûr des automobiles qui passent. Ben, c'est quelque chose quand même, je trouve. Bon, en tout cas, fait que je vous fais appel à tous et toutes à soutenir la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, vis-à-vis de mon travail en géopolitique. C'est plus important que d'autres choses, que je vous dis que c'est la solution, parce que car et à cause qu'on a des problèmes des finances et de l'économie majeurs en ce moment, puis bien sûr avec ce qui arrive avec les États-Unis puis dans le monde, moi-même, j'ai pas prévu qu'on aura des problèmes qu'on a maintenant, comme qu'on vit maintenant, là, de la diplomatie puis la guerre économique avec les États-Unis. Celle-là, j'ai pas prévu. J'ai prévu une convocation internationale. Fait que ça, c'est nouveau pour moi aussi, parce que j'ai pas prévu que Donald Trump sera réélu, puis j'ai pas prévu qu'on aura des relations si mauvaises. Parce que ça, là, nous, là, en tant que Québécois-Canadiens, notre intérêt principal, quand ça vient de la priorité d'une hiérarchie prioritaire, en numéro un, quand ça vient là, de la politique externe, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis. Ça, on ne peut pas dire non à ça. C'est une constance, comme le symbole pi. C'est la constance mathématique qui a la relation du cercle vis-à-vis le diamètre et la circonférence du cercle. C'est toujours 3,1415, fait que c'est constant. Puis que c'est comme ça chez nous depuis bien des décennies, là, avec le Québec et le Canada. C'est la même chose qu'on ait les meilleures relations. Fait que là, on est rendu à avoir des relations si basses que, vous savez que ça m'inquiète depuis le 1er août. On est désigné par l'administration de Trump, le Canada, là. Ça me donne des frissons, vous voyez. Là, ça me donne des frissons, là, juste en parler. On est désigné comme une menace extraordinaire et hors commun. En anglais, le mot unusual, c'est hors commun. Hors commun, ça veut dire hors des normes non normales. Et bien sûr, à cause du fentanyl, ils disent qu'on n'a pas coordonné, bien sûr, nos forces policières de sécurité n'ont pas fait assez de coordination vis-à-vis de fentanyl. Et bien sûr, pour dire, tu sais, que la GRC, ils nous avertissent depuis à peu près 2015 vis-à-vis les groupes de criminels organisés transnationaux qu'on appelle les syndicats de groupes criminels qui viennent d'ailleurs, transnationaux, hors canadiens, tu sais. Puis justement, le 25 octobre l'année passée, ça fait même pas un an que la GRC a démantelé en Colombie-Britannique, à Surrey, en Colombie-Britannique, un énorme laboratoire de fentanyl qui aurait été capable de tuer 2 fois la population canadienne. Fait que moi, de plus en plus, je désigne ce fentanyl, cette drogue, comme une arme biologique. Parce que ça n'a pas de sens, tu sais. Parce que ça n'a pas de sens que les gens qui vendent ça, ils veulent que ça soit pour l'économie, pour faire de l'argent, tu sais, les trafiquants de drogue. Mais bien sûr, si ça tue des gens de même, là, c'est tellement dangereux, c'est sûr que c'est quelque chose qui tient pas le compte, tu sais. Fait que c'est ça qui m'inquiète le plus, qu'il y a des groupes d'externes à cause de nos implications militaires vis-à-vis de l'OTAN. Puis je viens justement de discuter la théorie de l'action ou l'assistance militaire directe vis-à-vis de l'OTAN, qu'il faut prendre en considération depuis aujourd'hui puis pour demain, pour qu'on n'ait pas des problèmes à l'avenir. Puis bien sûr, maintenant, on a des problèmes majeurs locaux à l'intérieur, économique. C'est pour ça que j'ai quand même sur la table des solutions vis-à-vis de la TRD, prendre toute la dette publique-privée pour la création de l'unité d'échange universelle, en combinant avec les États-Unis, puis en se fusionnant comme un empire républicain-démocrate avec le financement énorme bien sûr, de la réhabilitation, la reconstruction de l'infrastructure, financer les gens à l'entraînement physique et bien sûr, faire en sorte qu'on soit une réhabilitation de la population criminelle aussi, ceux qui méritent quand même une deuxième chance, puis qu'on construit les 44 tunnels à travers l'Amérique du Nord dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire. Prêtez allégeance, les gens, vous êtes famille, pour l'Empire des 63. Donc au Québec, on continue à parler le français, ça prend un effort individuel aussi.